and welcome to my basic Avid class here. Once again, my name is Jason Rose. I'm an editor. I've been editing for, 30 years. I've also been pursuing filmmaking in that same amount of time, and I have been teaching editing for the last 15 years as a certified instructor in pretty much all the main editing programs that we use here in Hollywood. So for those of you that took a look at my Premiere Basics class, I'm going to try to cover essentially the same topics in Avid. And I'm really just trying to show you guys that no matter what editing program you're working on, they all have to basically do the same thing. You have to be able to get media in, you have to be able to organize that media, you have to edit that media into a sequence, and then you have to export it. Okay, so a lot of them have these same features. They just might look a little different. They might call them a different name. Obviously different keyboard shortcuts in the interfaces might look a little different, but they all have to cover these basic tasks. So once again, if you just want to sit back and watch this class, you can, but if you want to follow along with me as I do these lessons, you can purchase and download the media for this class for $9.95. I'll put a link in the description below, or you can also go to my website, filmschooled.com, to find the media there. And once again, if you are interested in all of these classes, I've done a Premiere one already, I'm doing the Avid one, and I'm going to do DaVinci Resolve, where I cover these same topics using the same media. So you just have to download the media once, and you can do all three classes. And once again, just purchasing the media makes it a little easier for me to do these classes because I shoot my own media, so there are no copyright issues or anything like that. But we do pay our actors, we pay our crew, and stuff like that. And paying for and downloading the media goes to help make that happen. Okay, so with that, I want to go ahead and jump right into this. I'm going to go ahead and launch Avid, and we're just going to take a look at the Avid interface, and we're going to create a new project. We're going to get media into that project, and then we're just going to work our way through building a simple sequence using basic editing techniques. Now, I am going to go eventually and do more intermediate classes and advanced classes, but for right now, these classes are probably more for the beginning editor, or maybe if you're switching from one program to another and you want to just kind of, get your feet wet in the new program, this is the class for you. So I'm going to go ahead and launch Avid, and Avid can take a few seconds to launch here. It's kind of one of the slower ones starting up, so we'll give that a moment here. And when you first launch Avid, this is the first window that you come to, the Select Project window. And this is where we can open existing projects or create new projects. Now, I'm going to do a deep dive into this window in other lessons, but for right now, I want to focus on just a few things. First of all, we want to create a new project. So we're just going to start at the top and work our way down. So we're going to click this little New Project button right there. User profile. The user profile is you and how you like to work with the Avid. So the important thing about the user profile is there are settings within Avid called user settings. And this is how you like to work within the Avid. This is how you create custom keyboards, custom interface layouts, and things like that. And the nice thing about a user profile is you can take it with you. Okay, so right here, if you haven't already done this, go ahead and click this drop-down menu, and we're going to create a user profile. I have a couple of user profiles in mind. First of all, you have a default user profile named after whatever you've named your computer, and then you've got other profiles. This is one I have for an MC 101 class that I've been teaching. If you're working at a facility, when you click this drop-down menu, you might see a long list of names. of your fellow editors and assistant editors that share the same system with you, and they have their particular way of working with the Avid. But I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to click Create User Profile. And you've got three choices. Typically in the past you had one choice, just Media Composer, the standard user profile. But there is what they call Media Composer Classic, which rearranges your windows to look more like past versions of Avid. And then there's one called Transitioning from Premiere Pro. And this is for Premiere Pro editors that are trying to adopt Avid, but they want to make it look, or at least the windows be in the same place that they are in Premiere Pro. We're just going to go with the standard Media Composer profile. And then, of course, you're going to name your profile. Typically, you name it after yourself. So I'm just going to call mine Jason R. And I'm going to click OK. And that will create a new user profile, which you'll now be able to see under this menu. And it'll start with all of the default settings. And we're going to stick with those through most of this particular class. Next, there is location, where you're going to put the project that you're about to create. We're going to click this little drop-down menu here, and there's a default location that Avid automatically creates when you install the software on your system. It creates a folder inside your Documents folder called Avid Projects. And once again, we're going to keep it simple for this class. We're just going to put it there. But you'll see there's also a shared Avid Projects folder, and if you want to put your project somewhere else, you can click this little Browse button here. That will open up a Finder window, and then you could go navigate, and you could essentially put your project wherever you want. Okay, but we're going to leave it in Documents, Avid Projects. Next, for project name, we're just going to call this Scene 20. Scene 20, this is from a script that I wrote years ago, and we're just going to do a simple two-person dialogue scene. So we're going to call this Scene 20. And then for settings, we're going to select Choose For Me. Choose For Me. And what this is going to do is it's going to set your project format based on the first clip you edit into your timeline. Okay, now that is a fairly new feature within Avid. Traditionally, you choose your project format before you create your project. Now, if you're working on an older version of Avid that does not have this option to choose for me, you're going to go to Format, 1080, 1080p 24. Format, HD 1080, 1080p 24. And that's going to set the project up based on the media that we're working with. Okay, but otherwise, if you're working on the current version of Avid, we're going to have it choose for us. We're going to have it do it for us. Because once again, the whole point of this particular lesson is to get us in and editing as quickly as possible. When we get to the more advanced classes, I'll discuss, setting your project format up ahead of time, just so we can cover that. But for right now, we're going to say choose for me. And then once again, if you don't have that option, go to Format, HD 1080, 1080p 24. That will match the media that we're using for this project. Okay, so we're going to say choose for me. We're going to call this Scene 20. We've created a new user profile. We've chosen our location, Documents, Avid Projects. Then we're going to go down to the bottom right corner here. We're going to click Create. And that's going to create a brand new empty project. Just to make sure we're all kind of looking at the same thing, I'm going to go up to the Windows menu. I'm going to go to Workspaces, make sure my editing workspace is selected, and I'm going to choose Restore Current to Default, Restore Current to Default, and then I'm going to click Restore, and just make sure that everything is kind of at the default settings. Okay, so since we selected the option for Choose For Me, Avid has automatically created a couple of items in our project here. So here is the basic layout of Avid. We have three main menus. up here in the upper left, we have what's called the bin container. And the bin container is made up of the bin container sidebar, and then your bins open up over here on the right side of the window. Okay, and there's a little border here that we can use to kind of resize those. Okay, so this is the bin container. And then here we have what's called the composer. On the left of the composer, we have what's called the source monitor, where we view and mark our source clips. And then over here, we have what Avid calls the record monitor. This is where we view our edited sequence. Down here, we have the timeline. And in Avid, you can use the timeline to both view your sequences, but you can also use it to view your source clips. Okay, so we're going to focus on the bin container over here. So we have two bins. We have scene, 20 clips, and we have scene, 20 sequences. Those were automatically created when we created the project here. And they're both open. So if we go over here, we see scene 20 clips. There's a tab for that. And then scene 20 sequences. Okay, so we need to first of all get media into our project. So that's what our scene 20 clips bin is. So if you look right here, it says drag from source browser to add clips to project. Okay, drag from source browser to add clips to project. So this is basically telling us what we need to do to get things started. We need to get some media into our project, and there's a tool for that called the source browser. So to open up the source browser, there are at least 3 different ways to do this. You can either go to File, Input, Source Browser. You can also go to the Tools menu, Source Browser. Or if you have an open bin like we do, we can just right-click in the bin. That's going to open up a contextual menu. And you can go to Input, Source Browser. And that's going to open up this window. To move the source browser around, just grab the gray bar at the top and just kind of move it around here. If you want to close it, get out of the way, there's a little red X in the upper left corner. You can click that. That'll close it. And then to open it back up, we can right-click, Input, Source Browser. Okay, so the source browser is for doing just that, browsing your media, going and finding the media that you want to bring into your project. So right here on the left, we've got the Explore window that's going to show you all the drives that are hooked up to your system as well as your desktop. Over here, we have the File Folder View area where you can view the files and folders at that location. And then down here, we have options like whether we want to link to the media or import the media, and then what bin we want these clips to go into. Okay, so if you've downloaded and unzipped the media for this project, in fact, let's take a look at that on my system. I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut, Command-H to hide Avid, Command-H to hide Avid. And I have a drive called Media 002, my Media 2 drive. And I have downloaded the media, which once again, there's a link to download this, where you can purchase and download this media for $9.95 in the description below this video. And when you unzip it, you end up with a folder called Scene 20 Clips. That's full of a bunch of QuickTime movies, as well as the script for this particular scene. Okay, so this is where the media is on my system. It's on this external drive in a folder called Scene 20 Clips. So I'm going to go back to Avid. And over here in the Explore window, I'm going to click on my Media 2 drive. And when I click it, I can see the files and folders that are at that location. Okay, so I'm going to go to the Scene 20 Clips folder. And now I can see all the files that are in that folder. I'm just going to grab the corner of this and pull it down just so we can see a little bit more at once here. Okay, so we have 2 different views here. Right now, I am in what's called a list text view, which basically gives us a list of all the clips, and we can find out information about the clips like the name of the clips, obviously, the size of the clip, the type of file that they are. If we scroll over, I can get other information like how they've been compressed, what is the codec for these. We've got the frame size, also called raster dimension, 1920 by 1080, and so on. Frames per second, 24 frames per second. Okay, all the information we need about these clips. But there's another view. Okay, right down here in the bottom left corner of this window, there's text view, and then there's a button for frame view. And frame view is going to give me a frame, or sometimes called thumbnail view, of these clips. Right here is a slider that I can use to make those frames larger or smaller. And the whole point of the source browser is that we can go here and we can watch these clips before we officially bring them into the project. Okay, once again, it's for browsing our source media. So if you just move your mouse over these clips, it scrubs through the clips. Okay, in Premiere, they call this hover scrub. You hover your mouse over a clip and it scrubs through the clips. But we can also select a clip and simply hit our space bar to play it.
20. Filter button. Come on in.
Okay, we're about to roll.
You want to be over there or over there?
She can just stay there for this
one. All right. Scene 20, take 1.
Okay. Here we go, and action.
Lunchtime. No.
Okay, so once again, the whole point of the source browser is that we can go through and we can watch our clips before we officially bring them into the project. Okay, now, what we're going to do here is we're going to link to this media. We're just going to use it directly from where it is on our system. Okay, we've got the choice of link or import. Import is going to create new media that it's going to put in a specific location for Avid to use it. But we're going to say link. So here's how we're going to approach that. First of all, let's go back into text view. We're going to select the very first clip, this 20 take 1, and we're going to scroll down and we're going to shift click on the last MOV file. We're not going to select the PDF. Okay, so we're selecting all of our media files. We're going to make sure that link is selected. Make sure your target bin, the bin that these clips are going to go into, is Scene 20 Clips. And then click link. And boom, those clips are now going to show up in your Scene 20 Clips bin. We're done with the source browser. So we're going to close this. And if we take a look at the tab up here for the Scene 20 Clips bin, there's a little asterisk to the left of the name. And that means that a change has been made to this bin, but those changes haven't been saved yet. Okay, so we're going to hit Command S to save it. And the asterisk will go away, and that's how we know the bin has been saved. That would be Control S on a Windows system. Next, I want to make sure that these clips are sorted by name. So I'm going to go up here to the name column heading, and I'm going to double click it. And that's going to sort the clips by name. If I wanted to say sort the clips by duration, I could go to the duration column heading and double click that. And now they're sorted by duration. Okay, so whichever column header is the active column, it's going to sort them that way. So we're going to go back over to name. We're going to double click it. Now, we're going to keep most of these clips in the Scene 20 Clips bin. Okay, but there are some other clips here that don't have a name. They do belong with this scene, but these are actually just what we would call cutaways or B-roll, different shots that we might use to kind of create our opening sequence here. They're just kind of a bunch of shots from around one of the characters' desks, but we're going to use that. We're going to put these in a different bin. Okay, so the whole point of the bin container is this is how we organize our project. So right now I just have 2 bins over here, but I want to create a new bin. To create a new bin, we can either go File, New, New Bin, keyboard shortcut is Command N, or we can go over here to the bin container sidebar, right click, New Bin. That's going to create a brand new bin. It's going to automatically highlight the name, and we're going to call this Cutaways. Cutaways. And it opens it up over here. Now we've got an empty bin. So if we look at the top of the bin container, here's Scene 20 clips, here's Cutaways, here's our Scene 20 sequences. Okay, so we want to move these clips, all the clips that start with A001, into the Cutaways bin. So I'm going to click on the first one. I'm going to shift click on the last one. And then I'm going to click and drag from the icon, not the name. Don't get out of the habit right now of clicking on the names. Because if you click on the name kind of too slowly, it's going to highlight the name as though you're going to change it. Okay, so once again, I make sure I'm clicking on the icons when I do this type of stuff. So I'm going to click on the icon for that first A001 clip. I'm going to shift click on the bottom one, and then I'm going to click and drag them over to the bin container sidebar, and I'm going to drop them on the Cutaways bin. And it moves them from the Scene 20 clips bin to the Cutaways bin. And you'll notice that we now have an asterisk beside both of those bin names in the tabs at the top of the bin container. To save both of them at the same time, we can go over to the bin container sidebar, click on it to make it the active window, and then hit Command S. And that will save all of your bins at once. Otherwise, if you're clicked over here on one bin and hit Command S, it's just going to save that one bin. Okay, so let's go back over to Scene 20 clips. And let's talk about different ways we can view these clips in the bin. So at the top of the bin are different bin views. We have text view, which is like a list of your clips. We have frame view, what some people might also call thumbnail view. And then we have what's called script view, which is like a combination of script view and frame view. Okay, let's focus on frame view. Let's go back to frame view. We're going to click that button. Here's the first keyboard shortcut I want you to learn. Command L is going to make those frames larger. Command K is going to make those frames smaller. Command L, Command K. Now there is a slider up here that does the same thing. However, you're going to find those keyboard shortcuts are useful throughout the program. Command L, Command K. On a Windows system, Control L, Control K. Okay, the other thing I want you to learn is this. In the upper left corner of the bin is what's called a fast menu. And to see as many clips as possible in this bin when you're in frame view, you can go to the fast menu, go to Align and Fill, and choose Fill Window. Fast menu, Align and Fill, Fill Window. And that will make as many clips as possible fit into that window. Okay, so once again, that is Fast menu, Align and Fill, Fill Window. Now, if I resize these windows, you can actually grab the border between two windows and drag to resize them. If I were to resize that bin container and then go Fast menu, Align and Fill, Fill Window, boom. Now it'll once again make as many clips as possible fit into that window. I'm going to go back, Fast menu, Align and Fill, Fill Window. Now, if you have a clip selected in the bin, if you have a clip or multiple clips selected, and you go to the fast menu, you're going to get a much longer fast menu. Because now Avid's not sure if you want to make changes to the bin or the selected clips. Okay, but don't worry. If we go all the way down here, align and fill window is still here. It's just moved further down the list. Okay, so here is what's kind of cool about frame view. I'm going to make these frames a little larger. And then I'm just going to click on a clip. And I'm going to hit the space bar to play it.
Scene 20B, take 2.
Okay. Go and action.
Lunchtime. Just a minute. No, now.
Okay, so we can play these clips directly in frame view in the bin without having to load them into the source monitor. Okay, now I'm going to show you a few keyboard shortcuts. First of all, if you're working with an extended keyboard with a home and an end key, the home key will jump to the beginning of the clip. The end key will jump to the end of the clip. Home and end. You can also use your J, K, and L keys to play through the clip. L will play forward.
Scene 20B, take 2.
K will pause it, and J will play backwards. Also, the more you hit L or J, the faster it plays. So I can hit L.
Scene 20B, take 2.
Then I can hit it again. And again. Once again, K will pause it. J will play backwards. The more you hit J, the faster it will play backwards. Okay, so that's J, K, and L. You can also use the keys going across the top of your keyboard to step through the clip. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 3 and 4 will step forward or backwards one frame at a time. So 3 and 4 step forward or backwards one frame at a time. 1 and 2 step forward or backwards 10 frames at a time. Okay, so 3 and 4, 1 frame forward, 1 frame backwards. 1 and 2, 10 frame forward, 10 frame backwards. Now, aside from using this to preview the clip, you can also use this to choose a different poster frame for the clip. Okay, so let me show you how that might work. So, for example, most of these shots, we see the slate at the beginning of the shot. And some of them the slate is kind of in the way. And the whole point of frame view is that we can quickly look at these clips and kind of see what's going on in the shot. Okay, so if I wanted to get the slate out of the way, here's what I might do. I might start by selecting all the clips in the bin. I can do that by clicking in the bin and hitting Command A on my keyboard. Command A is the keyboard shortcut for select all. Shift Command A is deselect all. So Command A to select all, be Control A on a Windows system. And then I could tap on the number 2 key, and that's going to move all the selected clips forward 10 frames at a time. And I would simply do that until I no longer see the slates in any of the shots. And that's going to give me a better poster frame where I can just quickly look at the shots and kind of see what's going on. Okay, so those are different ways that you can play through a clip while it's still in the bin. Once again, you can click on a clip, spacebar to play.
Okay.
And pause it. You can use J, K, and L. L to play forward.
What's this?
K to pause it. J to play backwards. If you want to go fast, you can hit L or J multiple times. and then 1, 2, 3, and 4. 3 and 4, forward or back 1 frame at a time. 1 and 2, forward or back 10 frames at a time. You can also use the 5 key to do the same thing as the space bar. Play.
What's this? Green tea.
And pause the clip. Okay, but now let's view the clips in our source monitor because we're about ready to start editing. So at this point, here's what I would do. First of all, you want to go through and you want to watch all of your media before you even start editing. Okay, so to load a clip into the source monitor, you can either double-click a clip to load it into the source monitor. You can also select a clip and drag it from the bin to the middle of the source monitor to load it there. Or you can select a clip and hit return on your keyboard, and that will load the clip into the source monitor. Once the clip is in your source monitor, you can play it the same way that we did in the bin. I can hit my space bar to play and pause the clip. I can use J, K, and L. L to play forward.
Scene 20, take 4.
The more you hit L, the faster it plays. K will pause it. J will play backwards. The more you hit J, the faster it plays backwards. And once again, K pauses it. 1, 2, 3, and 4 do the same thing. 3 and 4 step forward or back 1 frame at a time. 1 and 2 step forward and back 10 frames at a time. 5 key does the same thing as the space bar. Play and pause. Once again, if you have a home key, you can hit the home key to go to the beginning of the clip, end key to go to the end of the clip. Home and end. And so what I would do is go through, watch the media. Also take a look at your script. So in the folder, if you did download the media, there is a script for this scene. It's 4 or 5 pages long. Go through, read that, just so you're comfortable and know the scene pretty well. Pause this video, do that, and when we come back, we will start with our basic editing. Okay, and we are back. So we have created a project. We have linked to media that we're going to edit into our sequence. We've moved some of that media to another bin. We've learned how to view our media, but now we're ready to start editing. Now, one thing I like to do, especially with beginner classes here, like this one, or basic editing classes, is I want to add a second row of buttons underneath my composer. Okay, remember this entire window right here, this is the composer, and it's made up of a source monitor and a record monitor. And we have these button bars underneath it that are completely customizable, but for right now I just want to see a second row of buttons. I want to have more controls. So we're going to go to our composer settings. The quick and easy way to get to your composer setting is to simply right-click somewhere on the composer, go down to the bottom of the menu and choose Composer Settings. And that will open up your composer settings. And right here on the very first tab, there's a box about halfway down that says Button Display at Bottom. We're going to switch it from 1 row to 2 rows. And we're going to click OK. And that's going to give us a second row of buttons. Now, as you work, if you're not sure what a button does, you can rest your mouse over a button, a tooltip will pop up and tell you what the keyboard shortcut is for that button. Okay, so the play button, there are several different keyboard shortcuts for play. The 5 key, the tab key, the space bar, and the tilde key. Okay, lots of different ways to play a clip. We've got mark in. You can hit E or I to mark an in. Mark out, R or O. Here are the buttons for stepping forward or back 1 frame at a time. We already know that 3 and 4 are the keyboard shortcuts for that. Step forward or back 10 frames at a time. 1 and 2 are the keyboard shortcuts for that, which we already know. Okay, so this is a good way to learn your keyboard shortcuts because in the long run, the more keyboard shortcuts that you can learn, the faster you're going to be. And one part of being a good editor is being a fast editor. Okay, so we're going to start out simple. I'm going to go to the master shots, which is this 20 take 1 through 20 take 4. Okay, now, ideally, I would go through, I'd watch all these, pick the best one. For most of my editing for this class, I'm just going to go for the last take of each of these. Okay, so I'm going to go to 20 take 4. I'm going to load that in. That's going to load it in the source monitor. And then I'm going to play the entire scene so we get a feel of what it is. This is about 2 minutes long. So let's just sit back and watch this. And, okay.
Scene 20, take 4.
Okay, Veronica, let me know when you're ready.
Set.
Okay, and action.
Lunchtime. Just a minute. No, now. Okay. What is this?
Green tea.
But I wanted a Coke.
Soda's bad for you. Plus, you've been looking a little puffy lately. This is better for you. Trust me. Where's Hal?
He's out with John and Vincent.
Why do you let him do that to you?
What?
Dump all the work on you?
He doesn't.
He's never here.
He's here at night.
Really?
Yes, it's true. He finishes the work from the day before and sets me up for projects for the next day. Sometimes I think he just leaves because the sun is coming up.
You're such an apologist for him. He's taking advantage of you.
He isn't. He isn't.
You know what I say?
What?
I say you open your own business. You're too good to be working for someone who slacks off and leaves you to do all the work.
Like I said, we split all the work equally, really.
Sure.
Look, if Hal could work for 24 hours a day, I bet he would. He would stay here day and night.
Oh, yes. He's such a saint. You know, I bet he never even leaves. He probably crawls under the desk and sleeps whenever he gets tired.
No, that's weird, and your mind's not working right.
Or maybe it works too well.
What is this?
A veggie burger.
But I wanted a hamburger.
No, you didn't. This is better.
Is this some fake pretend to be meat?
No, I don't trust those. This is true veggie.
But I...
No, you didn't. This is much healthier. Trust me.
Okay, so that's our scene. That's what we're going to be working with. Now, let's talk about the source monitor. This green bar, excuse me, this green bar underneath the source monitor is called the position bar. And then we've got this little green line in here, which is the playhead, officially called the position indicator, but most people call it the playhead. We can grab the playhead and we can drag it through the position bar to scrub through the clip. We can also just click anywhere in the position bar and our playhead will jump to wherever we click. Now you'll notice that as we drag this through, we do not hear the audio. We do not hear the audio scrub, as they call it. Well, in Avid, in order to turn audio scrubbing on and off, we actually have to map a button to our keyboard or to our button bars. So let's go ahead and do that now. To map buttons to your button bars, and by the way, we've got our button bars underneath our composer, but we also have a toolbar above our timeline, and we also have a few buttons down here at the bottom of the timeline that can also be remapped. We do this with a tool called the command palette, which we find under the Tools menu. So I'm going to go to Tools, Command Palette. That's going to open up this window right here. And there are different modes for the command palette. There's button-to-button reassignment, which is what we're doing. We also have active palette, which means you can use the buttons directly from this window. Or we also have menu-to-button reassignment that allows you to map menu items to buttons. Okay, once again, we're going to keep it simple. we're just going to map one button up here to the toolbar above our timeline. You'll notice that there are a couple of empty spaces here, and there's a lot of empty space over here. I can add buttons across all of that. I can also replace any of the existing buttons. Okay, but right here, this very first empty space, I'm going to put a button there. So at the top of the command palette, there are different categories of buttons. We're going to go to the play category, then over here all the way to the right, fifth column, fifth button down, toggle digital audio scrub. Looks like a little speaker. We're just going to grab that. We're going to drag it, and we're going to drop it on that little empty space in the toolbar above the timeline. And then we're going to close the command palette by clicking the red X in the upper left corner. Okay, so I've mapped a button there. Okay, so notice if I drag my playhead through the clip, I don't hear the audio scrub. But if I turn that button on, the one that I just added, it's going to highlight blue. And now I can hear the audio scrub as I drag my playhead through. Also, when I use my step forward and back one frame. We can hear the audio when we do that as well. By the way, when you have a clip loaded in the source monitor, you can also use your left and right arrows to step forward and back one frame at a time. Okay, so we're going to keep this really simple. We're going to do a simple sequence where it's just back and forth, back and forth. One person talks, the other person answers. Another person talks, answer. You know, back and forth, back and forth. We're not going to do anything super fancy here. So I'm just going to drag my playhead back. I'm going to find where we hear the director say action, and I'm going to mark an endpoint right after action. So I'm just going to play it. Okay, and action. Boom, I'm going to stop it right there. Okay, so I was just using J, K, and L to play through the clip. Once again, J will play backwards. K will pause it. L will play forward. And action. K to pause it. Okay, so this is where I want to start using the clip. I want to start using the clip right here where my playhead is. So I'm going to mark an endpoint. To mark an endpoint, we can hit the Mark In button right here, or we can hit I on our keyboard. And when I do, I can now see a little Mark In symbol in my position bar, and my overlays show me this kind of little jagged edge right there. That little jagged edge is telling me that I've marked an endpoint on this frame of video. Okay, then I'm going to play it, and I'm going to stop it right after her first line here. Actually, no, we might let them go a little back and forth here. Let's see what they say.
Lunchtime.
Just a minute.
No, now.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's a good place. Okay, so right after she says okay, I'm going to mark it out as they're kind of, passing the bag in between them. Okay, so once I get it close, I might use my left and right arrows. To go backwards and forwards, and maybe right as she's got her hand on that bag. This is where we want to stop using this clip. So we're going to mark an out point. We're going to hit the Mark Out button right here, or O on our keyboard. And now I can see a mark out right there, and I've got this little jagged edge over here on the right side of my source monitor to let me know that I marked an out point on that frame of video. Now, I want to preview the area that I marked. I want to play from in to out. So this is why we added a second row of buttons to our composer. Underneath the play button is a play in to out button. The number 6 across the top of your keyboard is the keyboard shortcut to play from in to out.
Lunchtime.
Just a minute.
No, now.
Okay.
Okay, so I've marked the clip. I'm ready to do my first edit. Now look right here in the middle of the timeline. It says drag clips here to start editing. Okay, basically what it means is I can now click in the middle of my source monitor, drag down to the timeline, and release the mouse. And it's going to give me a little warning here to let me know that it's going to create a project format based on that clip. And as we've already determined, our clip is 1920 by 1080 progressive media, 24 frames per second. So it's going to use that preset based on that clip. So we're like, yep, that's good. And we click OK or hit return. And we've edited our first clip into our sequence. To preview it, I can go up here, I can grab my playhead in my sequence now, drag it to the beginning of the clip, and we'll see that I've only edited that portion of the clip into my timeline.
Lunchtime.
Just a minute.
No, now.
Okay.
Okay, so couple of things here. If I look down at my timeline has one video track and two audio tracks. Okay, so here's the video track, here are the audio tracks. Over here, I have what are called track selectors. I have green track selectors on the left, blue track selectors on the right. The green track selectors represent my source clip. My source clip has one video track and two audio tracks. The blue track selectors represent my sequence, or what I'm viewing in my record monitor. So my sequence has one video track and two audio tracks plus a time code track. So we'll get deeper into this as we go along. Okay, but just know that the green track selectors represent my source, blue track selectors represent my record. Now you may have noticed that as I move my mouse over my tracks in the timeline, it turns into these different colored arrows. These are called segment modes. We'll talk about those in detail later on, but for right now, we're going to turn them off. We're going to turn them off, and we can turn them off up here in the upper left corner of the timeline. We have a couple tools called Smart Tools. Okay, so the Smart Tools are split up into segment modes and trim types. And you'll notice right now that they're both highlighted. I'm going to turn those off. And the reason I'm turning them off is because with them off, I can now just click anywhere in the middle of my timeline to move my playhead around. Okay, and that's going to make it a little easier for me, at least for right now, to navigate the timeline, especially if we do not understand how these tools work. Okay, so we've got one clip in our timeline right now. We now want to start adding to this. And we're going to start out with some basic drag and drop editing. Okay, so as she hands her the bag, maybe I want to go to a medium shot of this character. By the way, this character, this is Rory. This character, her name is Tristan. Okay, so I want to go to Rory's medium shot. So if we look at our clips here, every time we do a different camera setup, they change the name of the slate. Okay, so our master shot is 20, take 1 through 20, take 4. But then we go to a medium shot of Rory, and we are calling these 20A, take 1, 20A, take 2. And then we do a different camera setup, 20B, and so on. Okay, so I'm going to go to 20A, take 2. I'm going to play it, and I'm going to look for her line after they kind of hand the bag from one person to another. Camera's rolling.
Scene 20A, take 2.
Okay, go and action.
Lunch break.
Just a minute.
No, now.
Okay. What is this?
Okay, so her hand is a little high in that one, and it doesn't quite match the previous clip. Now, I don't know that the audience would notice, but I'm noticing. But let's go and take a look at take one. I have the feeling we're going to have the same issue here, but let's watch both of them. I'm just going to grab my play and I'm going to drag it over to where we at least get, you know, past that slate. And action.
Lunch break.
In just a minute.
No, now.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a little weird because her hand is going to be high up in the first in this shot here if we grab our playhead, and it's going to be kind of up here. Now, that's a continuity issue. Is the audience going to notice that? They might. But we'll use it for now. We'll use it for now. We'll fix it. We'll fix it later. Okay, so I'm just going to hit I to mark it in.
What is this?
And right after a line, what is this? I'm going to mark an out. Once again, when I get it close, I might use my left and right arrows to kind of move my playhead forward early or later, because if I'm too far back, she's still saying this, and we might kind of cut that off. If we go too far forward, Tristan starts to answer. Okay, so I'm just using my left and right arrows to precisely put my playhead where I want it, and then I'm going to hit O to mark it out. And then I'm going to hit play into out just to kind of preview what I've marked.
What is this?
And I want to edit this at the end of my timeline. Okay, so we're going to start with some drag and drop editing. Here's how we do this. I'm just going to click in the middle of my source monitor, drag down to the timeline. I get a little kind of ghost clip there. And what we want to do is we want to make sure this snaps all the way to the end of the sequence. So I'm going to drag it to the end of the sequence, and when I get it close, I hold down the Command key. And the Command key will make it snap to the end of the sequence, and then I release the mouse. And I've edited that clip into the timeline. I'm going to grab my playhead to drag it to the beginning of my sequence. I'm going to play it.
Lunchtime.
Just a minute.
No, now.
Okay. What is this?
Okay, as I said, the continuity's off. Don't know that the audience would notice, but I might go back later, try to fix that somehow. But for right now, that's going to work. Okay, so once again, we're going to go back and forth. We're going to do a couple of these drag and drop edits, and then we'll talk about using the insert and overwrite functions. But right now, we're just going to put one clip right after another. So now we want to go to Tristan's medium shot. Now, here are her medium shots here, 20C. We've got a 20C take 1, 20C take 2, but those thumbnails aren't very good here. So I'm just going to select both of them in the bin. To do that, I can click on one, shift click on the other so they're both selected, and then I'm going to tap on the 2 key just to get her in position there, just so I've got a better thumbnail for that. And once again, I'm going to start with the second take, 20C take 2. I'm going to scrub forward, and I'm going to find her response to what's this.
Lunch break.
Just a minute.
No, now.
Okay. What is this?
Green tea.
But I wanted a...
Okay, green tea. That's what we're going to mark here. Now, we're going to mark this a little differently than before. Okay, I'm going to actually view this clip in the timeline. Okay, that's one of the kind of big differences between Avid and the other programs, is that the timeline can be used for viewing our edited sequence, but it can also be used for viewing our source clip. To do that, down at the bottom of the timeline, there's a button that when you rest your mouse over it, says Toggle Source Record in Timeline. And when I click it, it's now going to show me my source clip. If we look over here on the left side of the timeline, the track selectors have now switched. The blue track selectors are on the left, which represent what's in the record monitor, and the green track selectors are now on the right, and they represent what's in the source monitor. Okay, so record monitor, blue track selectors, source monitor, green track selectors. Okay, now, the other thing that's going to make it easier to mark this clip based on the dialogue is if we can see what's called the audio waveform in the clips in the timeline. It's a visual representation of your audio signal. To turn on your audio waveform in the timeline, we're going to go down to the fast menu in the bottom left corner of the timeline. Okay, so once again, upper right corner of our bins, we have a fast menu for bin options. Bottom left corner of the timeline, we have a fast menu for some timeline options. So we click on that. Lots of different options here, but we're going to go up to audio data and we're going to choose waveform. Audio data, waveform. And that's going to show us an audio waveform on our clip in the timeline. Okay, now I'd like to make these tracks a little taller. Okay, so the keyboard shortcut to do that is Command L. To make the track shorter, Command K. So remember earlier I told you these keyboard shortcuts were going to come in handy because you use them all throughout the program. So if your timeline is active, Command L is going to make the active tracks taller. Command K is going to make the active tracks shorter. Command L, Command K. Next, Option Command L is going to make the waveform larger. Option Command K is going to make the waveform smaller. Okay, this is a way to make it easier to see the waveform. Okay, so Command L, Command K changes the size of the tracks. Option Command L, Option Command K changes the size of the waveform. Okay, so remember, we're listening for green tea. So I'm going to drag my playback. I'm going to play it. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to look at my waveform, but I'm also going to listen for green tea.
Set.
Okay, and action.
Lunch break. Just a minute. No. Now.
Okay. What is this?
Green tea.
Okay, so there's green tea, but I want to get in nice and close to mark an in and an out around it. So at the bottom of our timeline, there's a bar called the scale bar. This is one of the ways we can zoom in and out on our timeline. So I'm going to grab the scale bar. I'm going to drag it over to the right. I'm going to zoom in nice and close. Over here, we have a scroll bar that we can use to kind of move up and down the timeline. I'm going to drag my playback and I'm going to find green tea.
What is this?
Green tea.
Okay, right there.
Green tea.
So I want to mark an in and an out around that. So I'm going to put my playhead right before she says green tea, and I'm going to hit I to mark an in. And I've marked an in point on that frame of video. If we look up here, we can see the jagged edge on the left side of the screen. We can see the mark in right there, and we can also see the mark in here. Okay, then I'm going to put my playhead after green tea. I'm just going to play it.
Green tea.
I'm going to pause it, maybe back up a little bit. And then I'm going to hit O to mark an out. Okay, and you'll see that the area between the in and out point is highlighted. I'm going to hit the play into out button or the number 6 on my keyboard.
Green tea.
And I've marked that clip. Okay, now I need to go back to my sequence view or my record view. So I'm going to go down to the bottom of the timeline. I'm going to click the toggle source record and timeline button. I'm now back looking at my sequence. I'm going to click in the middle of my source monitor, drag down to the timeline, drag it to the end of my sequence, hold down the command key to make it snap, and release the mouse. And then I'm going to drag my playback. I'm going to check my work.
Lunchtime.
Just a minute.
No. Now.
Okay.
What is this? Green tea.
Okay, so now we're just going to do a little back and forth. I'm going to do 2 more edits like that. Then we're going to take a break. And then we're going to talk about the insert and overwrite functions. Okay, but right now we're just putting one clip right after another. So I want to go back to Rory's medium shot. So I'm going to go up here to my Scene 20 clip spin. I'm going to find 20A, take 2. And I'm going to find her response to that.
Green tea.
But I wanted a Coke.
Okay, there it is. But I wanted a Coke. Now, once again, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to go down to the bottom of my timeline. I'm going to click that Toggle Source Record in Timeline button. Couple of things to notice. When you're viewing your source clip in the timeline, not only are the green track selectors now on the right, your playhead is also turned green, and the Toggle Source Record button is green. And these are just visual cues to let you know you're viewing your source clip in the timeline. Okay, so I want to mark her line where she says, but I wanted a Coke.
What is this?
Green tea.
But I wanted a Coke.
So once again, I'm going to grab the scale bar. I'm going to zoom in. Find her line right here.
But I wanted a Coke.
Put my playhead before the line, I to mark an in.
But I wanted a Coke.
Put my playhead after the line, O to mark an out. If I want to preview that, I can hit play into out.
But I wanted a Coke.
I'm going to go back to the bottom of my timeline, click the Toggle Source Record in Timeline button, click in the middle of my source monitor, drag to the end of my timeline, hold down the Command key, release the mouse. And I've edited that clip at the end of my sequence. I'm going to drag my playhead back and play it.
Lunchtime.
Just a minute.
No. Now.
Okay. What is this?
Green tea.
But I wanted a Coke.
Okay, now, for the next edit, instead of switching to source view in the timeline, I'm just going to do everything up here in the source monitor. I'm going to go back to Tristan's angle. You'll notice that the in and out points from the previous edit are still here. That's okay. As soon as I mark new in and out points, those are going to go away. Okay, so I'm just going to play it. I'm going to find her next line.
But I wanted a Coke.
Soda's bad for you. Plus, you've been looking a little puffy lately, so this is better for you. Trust me. Where's Hal?
Okay, I feel like she flubbed that line a little bit, so I'm going to go to 20C, take 1. And I'm going to find that same line here, see if she does a little bit better job.
Okay. What is this?
Green tea.
But I wanted a Coke.
Soda's bad for you. Plus, you've been looking a little puffy lately. This is better for you. Trust me.
Okay, that's better. So I'm going to hit K to pause it, J to go backwards.
Ugh, I don't want.
Okay, quick little side note.
But I wanted a Coke.
I could use my left and right arrows to step forward and back one frame at a time till I get my plate exactly where I want to mark my endpoint. But you can also do this. If you hold down K and L at the same time, it will play forward in slow motion. If you hold down K and J at the same time, it will play backwards in slow motion. And the big difference is if you use your left and right arrows, you hear the audio is kind of stuttery. Okay, that's like digital audio scrub. But if you hold down K and L or K and J at the same time, it does what's called an analog audio scrub. It's a smoother audio scrub, kind of like you're rolling tape over a playhead. Audio tape over a playhead. Okay, so once I get it close, I'm going to hit I to mark it in, L to play forward.
Soda's bad for you. Plus, you've been looking a little puffy lately. This is better for you. Trust me. Where's Hal?
He's out with.
Okay, so right there, where's Hal's where we're going to end it. So I'm going to hold down K and J at the same time. And then K and L at the same time. And then I'm going to hit O to mark it out. I'm going to hit play into out to check what I've marked.
Soda's bad for you. Plus, you've been looking a little puffy lately. This is better for you. Trust me. Where's Hal?
And then I'm just going to click in the middle of my source monitor, drag down to the timeline, drag this to the end of my sequence, hold down the command key, release the mouse. And I've edited that into my timeline. I'm going to drag my play back and check my work.
Lunchtime.
Just a minute.
No. Now.
Okay. What is this?
Green tea.
But I wanted a Coke.
Soda's bad for you. Plus, you've been looking a little puffy lately. This is better for you. Trust me. Where's Hal?
Okay, so this is a good place to take a break. So once again, go ahead and pause this video. Go ahead and do a few drag and drop edits, maybe get to where I'm at here. But when we come back, we're going to talk about using the splice in and overwrite function. Some people call it insert. Officially, Avid calls it splice in. We've got splice in and overwrite. We're going to talk about using these and the keyboard shortcuts. So I'll see you guys in a few minutes. And we are back. Okay, so in the last part of the lesson, we covered basic drag and drop editing. Mark an in and an out, drag the clip into the timeline, hold down the command key to snap it to the edit point where you want to put it in, release the mouse. And we're just putting one clip right after another. Okay, but now we're going to use the insert and overwrite functions, which are a little bit more professional way of working. Also, it'll allow you to be a little bit faster once you get used to them. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into that. Okay, so we just edited Tristan's clip in here. In fact, let's just go back to the beginning of our sequence. I can click on my timeline, and once again, if you have an extended keyboard, you can hit the home key to jump to the beginning of your sequence. The end key will jump to the end of your sequence. The home key will jump to the beginning of your sequence. So I'm going to hit the home key. I'm going to hit my space bar to play it, kind of see where we are now.
Lunchtime.
Just a minute.
No. Now.
Okay. What is this?
Green tea.
But I wanted a Coke.
Soda's bad for you. Plus, you've been looking a little puffy lately. This is better for you. Trust me. Where's Hal?
Okay, so now we're going to go to Rory's close-up, okay, because they're going to kind of argue a little bit here. So I'm going to go up here. We've got the 20B takes 1, 2, and 3. Once again, I'm just going to go to the third take. I'm going to scrub forward and find her next line.
Now.
Okay. What's this?
Green tea.
I wanted a Coke.
Soda's bad for you, and you've been looking a little puffy lately. So this is better for you. Trust me. Where's Hal?
He's out with John and Vincent.
Okay, right there. So we're going to mark this line. So I'm going to hit J to go backwards, L to play forward.
Where's Hal?
I'm going to pause it right there. If necessary, I'm going to use my left and right arrows to get my play it right where I want it. I'm going to hit I to mark it in, L to play forward.
He's out with John and Vincent.
I'm going to pause it right there, O to mark it out. And once again, I'll just play into out.
He's out with John and Vincent.
Okay, but now I'm going to make sure that my playhead is at the end of my sequence. So if it's not already over there, I'm going to either drag it to the end of my sequence. I can also hit the end key to make sure it's there. And then I'm going to hit the splice in button. The letter V is the keyboard shortcut. And that will edit that clip at the playhead location into the timeline. I'm going to grab my playhead back, drag it back just a couple of clips, and play the end of my sequence here.
But I wanted a Coke.
Soda's bad for you. Plus, you've been looking a little puffy lately. This is better for you. Trust me. Where's Hal?
He's out with John and Vincent.
Okay, now I want to go to Tristan's close-up. So we've got a few of those shots here. Once again, if I go up to my Scene 20 clips bin, a couple of these poster frames, thumbnails, don't have a good poster frame. So I'm going to click on this clip here, and I'm just going to tap on the 2 key, and then I'm going to click on this clip here, tap on the 2 key, until I have a better poster frame for those clips. And then once again, to start, I'm just going to go with the last take, and I'm going to find her response to he's out with John and Vincent.
What's this?
Green tea.
But I wanted a Coke.
Soda is bad for you. And you've been looking a little puffy lately. This is better for you. Trust me. Where's Hal?
He's out with John and Vincent.
Okay, so right here, I'm just going to use my left and right arrows. Think right before she starts to do sigh there. We want to mark an in, I to mark an in. I can also hit the mark in button right there. L to play forward.
Why do you let him do that to you?
What?
K to pause it, and I'm just going to use my left arrow and to go back a few frames before Roy starts to talk. I'm going to hit O to mark it out. Now, just as a quick side note here, I am intentionally being very precise as I cut this into the timeline. As you get more advanced with Avid, you're going to find that you can, be a little bit more loosey-goosey as you cut stuff into the timeline, be a little bit more sloppy, and then trim things later on. But we're not going to get that deep into trimming in this particular class. So right now, I'm marking things very tight before I edit them into the timeline. Okay, so some of you are probably thinking, well, is there a way that after it's in the timeline, if I can refine it? The answer is yes. For sure, yes. And Avid does that very well. But for right now, in this class, we're going to keep it simple. Okay, so I've marked the clip.
Why do you let him do that to you?
My playhead is still at the end of my sequence, and I'm going to hit the splice in button or the letter V as in victory on my keyboard. That's going to cut that clip into the timeline. So we're just going to do a little back and forth between these two clips. So now I want to go back to Rory's close-up. But I don't want to have to go find it in the bin. We can also do this. If you go up to the upper left corner of your source monitor, there's actually a menu up here called the Clip Name menu. And when you click it, it's going to show you a list of clips that have recently been loaded into the source monitor. Okay, so I want to go back to 20B take 3. That is Rory's close-up. Okay, so once again, you can go to the Clip Name menu and reload any clips that have recently been loaded into the source monitor back in by going here. Okay, so I'm going to mark her next line. So I'm going to hit L to play forward.
Why do you let him do that to you?
What?
K to pause it. I'm just going to use my left arrow to go back. Right about there. And take a look. When I mark a new endpoint, it's going to update. Okay, so right now there's an in and an out. But as soon as I mark a new endpoint by hitting mark in or I on my keyboard, it's going to update the endpoint. I'm going to hit L to play forward.
What?
And then I want to mark a new out point. So I can either hit the mark out button or O on my keyboard, and that will update the out point. I'm going to hit play
What?
into out. Playhead is still at the end of my sequence. I'm going to hit the splice in button to cut that into the timeline. Now I'm going to go back to Tristan's close-up. I'm going to go up to my Clip Name menu, and that's going to be 20E, take 3. It's going to load that back in. L to play forward.
What?
I to mark it in. L to play forward.
Dump all the work on you?
And once again, I'm just using my left and right arrows to precisely position my playhead before I mark my in or my out. I'm going to hit O to mark an out.
Dump all the work on you? Dump all the work on you?
Okay, and then once again, my playhead is still at the end of my sequence. I'm going to hit the splice in button or the letter V on my keyboard to cut that clip into the timeline. I'm going to drag my playhead back a few clips, play it.
A little puffy lately. This is better for you. Trust me. Where's Hal?
He's out with John and Vincent.
Why do you let him do that to you?
What?
Dump all the work on you?
Okay, so now I want to go back to Rory's close-up. So I'm going to go up to the clip name menu. I'm going to reload 20B, take 3. Play it, find her next line.
Dump all the work on you?
He doesn't.
He's never here. Hurry, here, Benzie.
Okay, so I'm going to mark an in and an out around he doesn't. So I'm just using my left and right arrows to position my playhead. I'm going to hit I to mark an in.
He doesn't.
Back it up a little bit. O to mark an out. Now, just so you know, since we're putting one clip right after another, it really doesn't matter whether we hit splice in or overwrite. Okay, in this particular case, they're both going to do the same thing. Just to demonstrate this, I'm going to hit overwrite. My playhead is still at the end of my sequence. I'm going to hit overwrite or B as in boy to edit that into the timeline. Later on, we'll take a look and see exactly what the differences are. Okay, once again, I'm going to drag my playhead back a few clips.
Hal?
He's out with John and Vincent.
Why do you let him do that to you?
What?
Dump all the work on you?
He doesn't.
Okay, now let's kind of ease off. Let's ease off and go back to a medium shot. Okay, so I'm going to go to Tristan's medium shot. I'm going to go over to the bin this time, find 20C, take 2. And I'm going to find her next line.
This is better for you. Trust me. Where's Hal?
He's out with John and Vincent.
Why do you let him do that to you?
What?
Dump all the work on you?
He doesn't.
He's never here.
Okay, right there. He's never here.
Hurry, here, Benzie.
I'm just going to back it up. Just using my left and right arrows to kind of put my plate exactly where I want it. I'm going to hit I to mark an in, L to play forward.
He's never here.
He works at night.
Okay, once again, I'm just going to back it up. O to mark an out. Playhead is at the end of my sequence, and I'm going to go back to using the splice in button or the letter V on my keyboard. The next edit I will do a little differently. So I want to go back to Rory's medium shot. So I'm going to load 20A take 2 back into the source monitor. Play it.
No. Soda is bad for you. You've been looking a little puffy lately. This is better. Trust me. Where's Hal?
He's out with John and Vincent.
Why do you let him do that?
What?
Dump all the work on you?
He doesn't.
He's never here.
He works at
Okay, so right here, this is our next line. So for this one, since I am trying to mark these precisely, I am going to go down to the bottom of my timeline. I'm going to click the toggle source record and timeline button. Here are the in and out points that are already there from earlier. I'm going to grab this scroll bar here. I'm going to scroll over till I find my playhead.
He's never here.
He works at night.
Okay, so I'm finding exactly where she says he works at night.
He's never here.
He works at night.
Okay, so I'm going to mark an in and an out around that. Now drag my playhead back. I to mark an in. Drag it forward.
Works at
O to mark and out. Go back down to the bottom of my timeline, click the toggle source recorded timeline button, just making sure my playhead is still at the end of my sequence. Hit the splice in button or the letter V on my keyboard. Now I want to go back to Tristan's medium shot. This time I'm going to go to my clip name menu, 20C take 2, hit L to play forward.
He works at night.
Really?
Okay, right there.
Taylor.
Okay, so I'm just going to back it up, I to mark an in, L to play forward,
Really?
O to mark an out, splice in, or hit the letter V on your keyboard. Going to go back to Rory's medium shot. Go to the clip name menu, 20A take 2, L to play forward.
Really?
And then once again, I'm just going to use my left and right arrows to go back a little bit. I to mark a new endpoint.
Yes, it's true. He finishes projects from the day before and starts on new projects for the next day. Sometimes I think he just leaves because the sun is coming up.
Why are you such an...
Okay, right there. So this is going to be a little difficult, figuring out, where one person stops talking and the other one begins. So perfect opportunity to go down to the bottom of the timeline, click the toggle source recorded timeline button. You might have already noticed that each of our actresses here have their own audio track. Okay, each of them is actually wearing their own microphone, and they've been split into their own tracks. Now, all of this was kind of prepped for this class. This is something you would typically have to do as you were prepping the project, but we've kind of made it easier to jump right into the editing here. But if we look here, A1 is Rory's microphone, A2 is Tristan's microphone. So it's clear to see when each of them is talking.
Sometimes I think he just leaves because the sun is coming up.
Why are you such an apologist?
Okay, so here's where she says the sun is coming up, and here's her sigh before she says, why are you such an apologist? So I can get my playhead right between those two lines of dialogue, and I can hit I to mark an in.
Why are you such an apologist for him? I think he's taking advantage of you.
Okay, right there. So I'm going to hit O to mark an out. Click the toggle source recording timeline button. Play it still at the end of my sequence. And I'm going to hit the splice in button. Oops, I did the wrong one.
He works at night.
Really? Why are you...
Okay, so I accidentally marked the wrong part here. And this actually brings me to my next thing. In this class, if you make a mistake like this, like I just made, all I want you to do is just immediately hit Command Z to undo it. Hit Command Z to undo it. Now, you might be going, well, what if I get further down the project and realize that I put the wrong clip in? Here is another way we could get rid of it quickly. So I'm going to put that clip back in. I'm just going to do my splice in. It's the wrong clip.
Really? Why are you such an apologist for him?
Okay, the other way to do this is to put your playhead over the clip and hit the letter T on your keyboard. That will mark an in and an out around the clip. And then right here underneath the record monitor is a button that looks like a pair of scissors. That is for extracting or cutting things out of the timeline. You can hit that and that will remove it as well. But as I said, for this class, if you make a mistake like that, just hit Command Z and we'll talk about more advanced ways to do these things later on. Okay, so I marked the wrong part, wasn't paying attention. I'm going to go back down to my toggle source recording timeline button. It was actually the previous line of dialogue from Rory that I wanted. So I'm just going to drag it back.
Really?
Yes, it's true. He finishes projects from the day before and starts on new projects for the next day. Sometimes I think he just leaves because the sun is coming up.
Okay, so I'm going to mark that. So I'm going to hit I to mark an in. That will update the endpoint.
Yes, it's true. He finishes projects from the day before and starts on new projects for the next day. Sometimes I think he just leaves because the sun is coming up.
What?
Okay, so once again, I'm going to put my play at when Rory finishes her line, but before Tristan sighs. And then I'm going to hit O to mark an out. Now I've got the right clip marked. If I want to, I can double check it.
Yes, it's true. He finishes projects from the day before and starts on new projects for the next day. Sometimes I think he just leaves because the sun is coming up.
I'm going to go down to the bottom of my timeline, click the toggle source recorded timeline button. Play it still at the end of my sequence. I'm going to hit splice in or the letter V on my keyboard. Drag my play it back and make sure I did it right this time.
Work on you?
He doesn't.
He's never here.
He works at night.
Really?
Yes, it's true. He finishes projects from the day before and starts on new projects for the next day. Sometimes I think he just leaves because the sun is coming up.
Okay, now let's go back to Tristan's medium shot. I will go down to the bottom of the timeline, click the toggle source recorded timeline button, grab my scroll bar to scroll over until I find my playhead. And then I'm going to play it and find Tristan's next line.
Yeah, it's true. He finishes projects from the day before and sets up projects for the next day. Sometimes I think he just leaves because the sun is coming up.
You're such an apologist for him. He's taking advantage of you.
No, he isn't.
Okay, right there. So let's mark that.
You're such an apologist.
Okay, right there. So I'm going to hit I to mark an in.
You're such an apologist for him. He's taking advantage of you.
No.
Get my play it right at the end of her line right there. O to mark an out. Click the toggle source record and timeline button here and splice in or the letter V on my keyboard. Now, this next shot, let's go back to Rory's close-up because they're starting to argue again. So we want to get a little closer for the kind of more intense part of the scene. So I'm going to load her close-up in. I'm going to hit the L key a couple times so I can fast forward through these lines that we already have in here. So I'm going to hit the L key twice.
He's never here.
Okay, right here. So I'm just going to hit K to pause it and then L to play again in regular speed.
Taking advantage of you.
No, he isn't.
Okay, right here. So watch this. She says, no, he isn't. And then she pauses because obviously Tristan is giving some kind of a face. And then she starts talking again.
Taking advantage of you.
No, he isn't. He isn't.
Okay, that right there. Okay, so we're going to do it this way. As I said, there are lots of different ways we can approach this, but we're still just kind of going this back and forth method. So I'm going to mark her line.
Snazzy.
Taking advantage of you.
No, he...
Okay, so once again, once I get it close, left and right arrows. Okay, right there at the beginning of her no. They're almost talking over each other, so it's really tight here. So I'm going to hit I to mark an in.
No, he isn't.
Find the end of her isn't. O to mark an out. Play it is still at the end of my sequence. Splice in or the letter V on my keyboard. Go back to Tristan's close-up. I'm going to go up to the clip name menu, 20E, take 3. Once again, I'm going to hit the L key twice to kind of fast forward through the dialogue.
He doesn't.
Okay, K to pause it because we're getting close to the dialogue.
He's taking advantage of you.
No, he isn't. He isn't.
Okay, right there. She kind of tilted her head, but it's not a great reaction. Okay, so let's take a look at the other takes. Going to go to 20E, take 2.
He's never here.
He works at night. Sun is coming up.
Okay, so once again, I just hit K to pause it L to play forward at regular speed.
You're such an apologist for him. He's taking advantage of you.
No, he isn't. He isn't.
Okay, there's that one. Let's try one more. 20E take one. Kind of going back in time here.
He works at night. Projects for the next day. Sometimes I think he just leaves because the sun is coming up.
You're such an apologist for him. He's taking advantage of you.
No, he isn't.
Okay, I'll do that one. Okay, so I'm just going to back it up here. I to marking in. O to marking out. And it should just be her little, You know what? I don't like that one. Let's go back to this one.
He isn't. Snazzy. Snazzy. He isn't. He isn't.
Nope, I don't like that one either.
He's taking advantage of you.
No, he isn't.
Okay, we're going to do that one. Now, as I said, I would probably do this a different way, which we'll talk about adding reaction shots later on in the next part of the lesson. But for right now, I'm just going to insert this little head thing that she does in between Rory's lines of dialogue. Okay, so she does this little head move. I'm going to splice that in. Then we're going to go back to Rory's close-up. That's going to be 20B take 3. And then see, notice she does a little head thing back. So we're going to mark that. I to marking in.
He isn't.
But before Tristan starts to talk, O to marking out. And then splice in. And then let's take a look at it. Just going to grab my play and drag it back.
Yes, it's true. He finishes projects from the day before and starts on new projects for the next day. Sometimes I think he just leaves because the sun is coming up.
You're such an apologist for him. He's taking advantage of you.
No, he isn't. He isn't.
Okay, good. Okay, so now let's go back to Tristan's close-up.
You know what I say? Yes. Yeah, I know what
Snazzy. He isn't.
Okay, I think here we should probably go back to the medium shot. So let's go to the 20C take 2.
No, he isn't. He isn't.
You know what I say?
What?
I say you open your own business. You're too good to be working for someone who slacks off and leaves you to do all the work.
Like I said,
Okay, so let's do that.
He isn't.
Okay, so I'm going to mark an in point right after she says isn't. I to mark an in. L to play forward.
You know what I say?
What?
I say you open your own business. You're too good to be working for someone who slacks off and leaves you to do all the work.
Okay, right about there, I'm going to mark an out and splice that in. Let's go back to Rory's medium shot. L to play forward.
Why are you such an apologist for him? I think he's taking advantage of you. He doesn't. You know what I say?
What?
I say you open your own business. You're too good to work for someone who slacks off any chance he gets and leaves you to do all the work.
That's not how it is.
Okay, so once again, I'm going to put my play it right after she says work. I to mark an in.
That's not how it is. I already told you we split the work equally. Really.
O to mark an out.
Sure.
That's not how it is. I already told you we split the work equally. Really.
And splice in, or V on our keyboard. I'm going to drag my play it back and check it.
Really?
Yes, it's true. He finishes projects from the day before and starts on new projects for the next day. Sometimes I think he just leaves because the sun is coming up.
You're such an apologist for him. He's taking advantage of you.
No, he isn't. He isn't.
You know what I say?
What?
I say you open your own business. You're too good to be working for someone who slacks off and leaves you to do all the work.
That's not how it is. I already told you we split the work equally. Really.
Okay, so now let's go back to Tristan's medium shot.
Like I said, we split the work equally. Really.
Okay, so I to marking in.
Sure.
If Hal could work with laughing.
O to marking out. Splice in. Back to Rory's medium shot.
Sure.
I to marking in.
Really, if Hal could work for 24 hours, I'm sure he would.
Oh, yes. Sayo.
O to marking out. Splice in. Once again, we could also be hitting overwrite or B on our keyboard. Doesn't matter if we're just putting one clip right after another in the timeline. Let's go back to Tristan's medium shot.
If Hal could work for 24 hours, he would. He'd stay here day and night.
Okay, I to marking in.
Oh, yes. He's such a saint. You know, I bet he never even leaves. He probably crawls under desk and sleeps whenever he gets tired.
Marking out. And once again, we can either play in to out by clicking this button here or the number 6 at the top of our keyboard.
Oh, yes. He's such a saint. You know, I bet he never even leaves. He probably crawls under desk and sleeps whenever he gets tired.
Splice in. Back to Rory's medium shot. 20A, take 2.
Oh, yes. He's a saint. Maybe he didn't leave at all. Maybe he just crawls under the desk and goes to sleep whenever he gets tired.
Okay, right about here, I'm going to hit I to marking in.
No. Mm-mm. That's weird. Your mind's not working right.
Okay, I'm just going to mark it out right there. Splice that in. Let's go to Tristan's close-up for her next line. Once again, I'm going to hit the L key a couple times.
You know what I say?
Okay, right about there, I'm just going to hit K to pause it, L to play forward.
Oh, yes, he's such a saint. You know what? He probably never even leaves. I bet he crawls under the desk and sleeps whenever he gets tired.
No. That's weird. Your mind's not working right.
Oh, probably. Oh, yes, he's such a saint. You know what? I bet he never even leaves. He probably.
So, quick little side note here. We told the actresses, you know, if you mess up or flub a line, we're just going to keep rolling. Just back up 1 or 2 lines and take it up from there. So she's actually doing exactly what we told her to do.
Crawls under the desk and sleeps whenever he gets tired.
No. That's weird. Your mind's not working right.
Or maybe it works too well.
Okay, that's good. So I'm just going to back this up. Okay, so right about here, I'm going to hit I to marking in.
Or maybe it works too well.
O to marking out. And V to splice that into the timeline. Let's go back to Rory's medium shot here.
Or maybe it works too well.
Okay, I to marking in.
What is this?
A veggie burger.
Says it. What is this?
O to marking out. 6 to play into out.
What is this?
V to splice it into the timeline. Let's go back to Tristan's medium shot.
No. That's weird.
Well.
What is this?
Okay, so I'm going to hit I to marking in.
A veggie burger.
O to mark and out, V to splice that in. For her, but I wanted a hamburger. I think we should have a close-up on that. So let's go back to this. 20B take 3. And once again, if you want to try something else out, you know, this is a chance to experiment, because obviously we're just kind of going back and forth here. I'm trying to stay wider on the lighter stuff, but whenever they argue, I'm trying to get a little closer. But, you know, sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes the line doesn't work in one place or another. So you have to make a judgment call. But I'm going to fast forward L key twice.
You know what I say? What? I say you open your own business. You're too good to be working for someone who slacks off and leaves you to do all work. Like I've been saying, we split all the work equally. Really? Sure. Really? I think if Hal could work for 24 hours, he would. Oh, he'd stay here day and night. Oh, yes, he's a saint. I bet he never even leaves. He probably crawls under the desk and sleeps here whenever he gets tired. No, that's weird. Your mind's not working right. For me, it works too well. What is this?
K to pause it, then L to play forward.
A veggie burger.
So I'm just going to back it up. I to mark it in.
But I wanted a hamburger.
O to mark and out. V to splice that into the timeline. Let's go to Tristan's close-up.
What is this?
A veggie burger.
But I wanted a real hamburger.
Okay, so I'm just going to back it up. I to mark it in.
No, you didn't. This is better.
Oh, she flubs the line.
Is this some fake pretend to be meat?
Oh. No, you didn't. This is better.
Okay, there we go.
You.
Okay, so I'm going to hit I to mark it in.
No, you didn't. This is better.
Is this some
O to mark and out. 6 to play into out.
No, you didn't. This is better.
Let's go a couple more frames over. Just hitting my right arrow, O to mark and out, and V to splice that in. Let's go back to Rory's close-up.
No, you didn't. This is better.
I to mark it in. I to mark it in.
What, is this one of those fake meat pretend burgers?
No.
Just using my left arrow to go back a little bit. Right arrow to go forward. Right about there. O to mark and out. V to splice that in. Let's go back to her close-up.
Is this some fake pretend meat?
So we'll say right about here, I to mark it in.
No, I don't trust those. This. Sorry.
So we'll say right here.
A veggie burger.
But I wanted
Oops, not there.
a hamburger.
No, you didn't. This is better.
But is this some pretend meat burger?
Okay, so notice I keep marking in and out points, and it just keeps updating every time. Okay, I'm not even really thinking about it. I'm just kind of, going with the flow. Let's try marking an endpoint here.
No, I don't trust those. This is true veggie.
O to mark and out. V to splice that in. And now, let me just double check here. I think we might be done with this.
A veggie burger.
But I wanted a hamburger.
No, you didn't.
This is better. What is this? Some fake not meats, pretend meats? No, I don't trust those. This is true veggie.
I really wanted a hamburger.
This is more healthy. Trust me.
Okay, so yeah. So for the actual eating of the burger, we saved that to the end. Okay, so we would always cut right about here. In fact,
Oh my god, I had an itch on my nose the whole time.
okay, so we cut there. But if we scroll down, as I said, we saved it to like the last part here. So we've got this 20J take 1, 20J take 2. I think 20J take 1 is the better one. This is where she actually takes the bite of the burger. So I'm just going to play it. And we are rolling.
20J, take 1.
And we're rolling. And action. Okay, so we're going to use that. Okay, so I'm just going to back this up. Okay, so right here I'm going to mark an in. Okay, and we're going to mark an out. Playhead is still at the end of our sequence. We're going to hit the splice in button or the letter V on our keyboard. Okay, so we've got a nice little rough edit going here. Okay, it is not perfect by any means, but we're going to go ahead, we're going to make it a little bit better in the next part of the lesson. But for right now, let's kind of back up and check it. Let's play it and see what we have. I'm going to click on my timeline, and you can either drag your playhead all the way back to the beginning of your sequence, or if you're working on an extended keyboard, hit the home key. And then let's just play this and see what we have.
Lunchtime.
Just a minute.
No. Now.
Okay. What is this?
Green tea.
But I wanted a Coke.
Soda's bad for you. Plus, you've been looking a little puffy lately. This is better for you. Trust me. Where's Hal?
He's out with John and Vincent.
Why do you let him do that to you?
What?
Dump all the work on you?
He doesn't.
He's never here.
He works at night.
Really?
Yes, it's true. He finishes projects from the day before and starts on new projects for the next day. Sometimes I think he just leaves because the sun is coming up.
You're such an apologist for him. He's taking advantage of you.
No, he isn't. He isn't.
You know what I say?
What?
I say you open your own business. You're too good to be working for someone who slacks off and leaves you to do all the work.
That's not how it is. I already told you we split the work equally. Really.
Sure.
Really, if Hal could work for 24 hours, I'm sure he would.
Oh, yes. He's such a saint. You know, I bet he never even leaves. He probably crawls under desk and sleeps whenever he gets tired.
No. Mm-mm. That's weird. Your mind's not working right.
Or maybe it works too well.
What is this?
A veggie burger.
But I wanted a hamburger.
No, you didn't. This is better.
What, is this one of those fake meat pretend burgers?
No, I don't trust those. This is true veggie.
Okay, so there is our rough edit. So that is the end of this part of the lesson. When we come back for the next lesson, we're going to talk about the real difference between insert and overwrite edits, and we're going to add some reaction shots and some cutaways to further improve our sequence. So I'll see you guys in a few. Okay, and we are back. So in the last lesson, we finished doing our rough cut of this scene. But now we want to go back and we really want to take a look at the real difference between insert and overwrite editing. So what I want to do is I want to add a few clips to the beginning of our sequence. Okay, so let's start by doing this. I want to take a little sidetrack, talk a little bit about customizing your keyboard, and I'm going to show you one of the things that I immediately change whenever I start a new user profile. This is something I kind of have to work with on my keyboard before I even get started editing. So let's go ahead and do that first. Okay, so right now I've just been kind of dragging my playhead through my sequence. And what we're going to be doing, we're going to be inserting some clips into our timeline. And if you want to insert clips in between other clips, you need to make sure that your playhead is right on the edit point. Okay, so one way to get your playhead right on an edit point is to hold down the Command key and click near the edit that you want your playhead to snap to. So I'm just holding down the Command key and I'm clicking near these edit points, and my playhead snaps to that edit. However, what I'd really like to do is I'd like to also use my up and down arrows on my keyboard to jump my playhead from edit point to edit point in my timeline. So we can do that a couple different ways. First of all, over here we have go to previous event and go to next event buttons in the bottom right corner of my record monitor. And I can click on those to jump my playhead from edit point to edit point in my timeline. Okay, but here's how they work. They work by active track selectors. So in a bit, we're going to add some reaction shots to an upper video track. So I'm going to add a new video track to my timeline. Right now I've just got one video track, two audio tracks, but I want to add a second video track. So we can do this by going up to timeline, new video track. The keyboard shortcut is Command Y. That's how I usually create a new video track. But we could also go down to our timeline, right-click somewhere in the timeline, go up to the top of that menu, video track. Okay, so I'm going to hit Command Y. That's going to add a second video track. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to make just that video 2 track a little larger. So here's where the track selectors come in. Up until now, I really haven't paid too much attention to the track selectors other than just saying that the green track selectors represent our source monitor and the blue track selectors represent our record monitor. Okay, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn all of these off. I'm just going to click on these so they're no longer highlighted blue or green, except for the video 2 track selector. And then I'm going to hit Command L, and that's going to make just that track taller. Command K will make it shorter. Okay, so I'm going to hit Command L, make that track a little larger. Then I'm going to turn that track off. I'm going to turn my timecode track on, and I'm going to hit Command K just to make that a little smaller because I don't need that timecode track to be very large. The other thing I want to do is I want to make sure I'm monitoring the video 2 track and anything underneath it. So over here on the right side of your patch panel, these are monitor buttons. And right now I'm only monitoring the video 1 track, but I want to make sure as I start to put clips up here on video 2, I want to be able to see them in my record monitor as well. So I'm going to turn on monitoring for video 2, and then I'm going to turn all these track selectors back on. Okay, now that I've done that, now when I hit my go to previous event and go to next event buttons, my playhead is jumping all the way to the head of the sequence and the end of the sequence. It's not stopping at all the edits because the way these buttons work by default is they're looking for the same edit point across all active tracks. And because I've added this new video 2 track and it doesn't have any edits in it, the only place where all 4 tracks share an edit is the beginning and the end of the sequence. Now, if I turn video 2 off, and now I hit my go to next event button and my go to previous event button, my playhead is now stopping at the edits again. Okay, so I want to do 2 things. First of all, I want to turn the way this works off. Okay, I want it to stop at every edit point regardless of what track selectors are on. Then I want to map those to my keyboard. Okay, so let's change the way this works first. Since these buttons by default live under the Composer monitor, this is a Composer setting that we're going to change. So I'm just going to go up to my Composer monitor. It doesn't really matter where. I'm just going to right-click Composer Settings. There are several tabs of settings within your Composer settings. The middle tab is the Move tab. And this determines how those buttons work. And it says, when the Composer or timeline is active, the Go to Next and Previous Event commands do the following. You can have a stop at head frames, meaning the head of the clip, tail frames, stop at markers, ignore track selectors, and stop at keyframes. Okay, so right now we're just here to tell it to ignore the track selectors. I click OK. Now, if I turn the video 2 track on, all the track selectors are back on. If I hit the Go to Next Event or Previous Event commands, it's still going to stop at every edit point, regardless of which track selectors are on or off. Okay, so that's step 1. Now to map it to the keyboard. And here's where we're really going to go in and take a deeper look at our user settings, or our user preferences, depending on what you want to call them. Technically, user settings in Avid. And we've already actually changed a couple of these user settings, but we haven't gone and taken a look at the settings. So we're going to go up to Avid Media Composer Preferences, or you can go to File Settings. They're going to take you to the same place. So File Settings or Avid Media Composer Preferences. And there are 4 tabs in our settings. There's our Format, our Project Format, Project Settings. Any of these settings that I change are going to only change the settings for the current project, our Scene 20 project. User settings are the settings that go with your user profile, the thing that we created right before we created our project. Site settings, think of these as settings for the computer that you are sitting at, for the specific hardware computer that you're sitting at. Okay, so we're going to go to user settings. Right at the top, there's your user profile. This is the user profile we created right at the beginning of the class. This is another place that we can switch to other user profiles, create user profiles. You can even export your user profile and then import it to another system. Okay, so we're going to leave it set to our user profile. And then these are all of our user settings. Okay, these are settings of how you like to work with the Avid. So they're in alphabetical order. We're going to go down to keyboard. And there are 5 different keyboards built in to Avid. Okay, there's the default keyboard, which they call the MC English keyboard. There's a variation of that called MC1 English. There's one called NC English. This is for the news cutter plugin. Okay, so basically if you're using Avid to cut the news, that's what that keyboard is for. They also have a keyboard with Premiere Pro keyboard shortcuts. So if you're a Premiere Pro editor and you want to start out with Premiere Pro keyboard shortcuts, you can do that. And the same thing for DaVinci Resolve. Now, we can also duplicate these settings. So what I want to do is I want to create a custom keyboard. So we can duplicate any of these settings by simply right-clicking on it. So I'm going to right-click on my keyboard for my MC English keyboard, and I'm going to choose Duplicate. And now I have a 6th keyboard. I've got this MC English United States .1, but I'm going to rename this. So on the second column, this is where you can rename the settings. I'm just going to click on this. You can call it anything you want. You can name it after yourself. You can call it editing keyboard, whatever you want. I'm just going to call this Jason's keyboard. I'm going to hit return. And then I'm going to make this the active setting. To make it the active setting, we simply click the checkbox next to it. Okay, now we haven't really changed the keyboard yet. We've just duplicated our default keyboard, renamed it, and made it active. But now we're going to customize it. So we're going to double click where it says keyboard. And that's going to open up our keyboard map. Now with Avid, you can map the key by itself, or you can hold down the shift key and do shift plus the key. Okay, unlike other programs, you can't do things like shift command, option shift, and all those variations, simply because Avid uses control, option, and command differently within the software. Okay, so it's the key by itself or shift plus the key. Now that really doesn't bother me too much because there are, first of all, a lot of redundancies on the Avid keyboard that I don't mind replacing. For example, you can mark an in and an out by hitting I and O or E and R. So I usually replace E and R with something else and use just I and O to mark in and out points. You can also play a clip by hitting the space bar, the tab key, the tilde key, and the 5 key. Okay, so I don't mind replacing one of those. Okay, or I can simply hold down the shift key, and there's a lot of empty keys with shift plus the key. Now what we're here for are our up and down arrow keys. So if we go over here, right now our up and down arrows are set to move clips up and down in the timeline from one track to another. So I'm going to replace that. I'm going to replace that with our go to previous event, go to next event commands. And we do that with the command palette. So I go up to Tools, Command Palette. Once again, I make sure that button-to-button reassignment is selected. In this case, I'm going to go to the Move tab. And over here, we've got Go to Previous Event, Go to Next Event. So I'm going to grab that Go to Previous Event button. I'm going to drag it to my up arrow. I'm going to grab the Go to Next Event, drag it to my down arrow on my keyboard. And I've replaced those functions with Go to Previous Event, Go to Next Event. Okay, now I close my keyboard. I close my command palette. Before I close my settings, I want to make sure and save my settings. So I'm going to hit Command S, and now I can close my settings. So now when I click on my timeline, I can now use my up and down arrows on my keyboard to jump from edit point to edit point in my timeline. And then once again, just to reiterate, if I want to simply snap my playhead to the nearest edit point, I can hold down the Command key and click near the edit that I want to snap to. Okay, so we're going to start by inserting a few clips at the beginning of our sequence. So using whatever method you want, put your playhead at the beginning of your sequence. So you can either drag it, you can hit the home key, you can hit your up arrow until you're all the way at the beginning of your sequence, or you can command click near the beginning of your sequence. Then we're going to go to our cutaways bin. We're going to put this in frame view. I'm going to hit Command L to make these frames a little larger. I'm going to go to the fast menu in the upper right corner of the bin, align and fill window. Okay, and I just want to add a few of these shots of the things around Rory's desk to the beginning of my sequence. Okay, so we'll start with, I don't know, we'll do the shot of the cat, the hang in there poster. Okay, so I want to mark a couple of seconds of this clip. One thing I try to avoid doing is I try to avoid marking an in point right at the head of the clip or an out point right at the tail of the clip. And that's because if you want to do something later on, like add a transition, like a dissolve or a wipe, you need a little bit of extra footage before the in point and after the out point to create that overlap for that transition to work. We call that extra footage. We call that handles. Okay, so I try to keep from marking a clip right at the beginning of a clip. So I'm going to drag my play at a couple seconds in. I'm going to hit I to mark it in. And then I'm just going to play it for about 2 seconds. I'm going to count it off kind of in my head. I'm going to hit the L key, 1001, 1002. And I'm going to hit O to mark an out. If you want to see the duration from in to out, up here in the middle top of the composer, this is the center duration field. And it's going to show you the marked duration of the active window. Okay, so right now my source monitor is active, and the marked duration of this is 2 seconds and 12 frames. If I were to mark an in and an out in my timeline, I to mark an in, O to mark an out, and click over here, I'm going to see the marked duration in the timeline. So I marked a duration of 15 seconds, 1 frame. But if I click on the source monitor, this switches to show me the marked duration in the source monitor. Okay, now I'm going to clear these in and out points. I'm going to click on my record monitor, and the keyboard shortcut to clear your in and out points is G. G is the keyboard shortcut to clear both marks. By the way, D clears the in, F clears the out, G clears both. Okay, so back to our insert. I want to insert this clip at the beginning of my sequence. So I'm just going to drag my playhead all the way to the beginning of my sequence. I'm going to take a look at my patch panel. So V1 is still patched to V1. That's basically saying the video from this clip is going to go into the video 1 track of the timeline. A1 is patched to A1. My A1 source, green A1 source, is going to go into A1 in the timeline. However, if I play this in to out, I don't like that background noise. I don't want to bring the audio from this clip into the timeline. So I'm going to go over to my green A1 track selector, and I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to turn it off, and I'm basically saying don't bring the audio into the timeline. I'm going to leave all my other track selectors on, and I'm going to hit the splice in button, or the letter V as in victory, on my keyboard. And that's going to cut that clip in, and it's going to push all the other clips down to the right. It spliced that in, or inserted it, as you might say. And it only brought in the video. It did not bring in the audio. I'm going to drag my playhead back and play it.
Lunchtime.
Just a minute.
Okay, I'm going to do that again. So I'm going to insert another clip right here. So I'm going to Command click to snap my play to that edit point. I'm going to load another clip into the source monitor. I'm going to mark a couple seconds of this. I to mark it in. L to play forward. 1001, 1002. O to mark an out. If I look up here, I can see that I marked a little over 2 seconds. And because it's a new clip, I have a new green track select over here. I don't want that audio, so I'm going to turn A1 off. I'm going to leave all these other track selectors on. I'm going to hit the splice in button, or the letter V, on my keyboard. That's going to splice that clip in. It's going to insert it, push all the other clips down to the right. Now, I'm going to show you a potential gotcha. Okay, and this is something you really have to be aware of in Avid, and then I'm going to show you a way that you can avoid it. Okay, let's say I want to insert this clip in. Okay, I'm going to start out by marking it. I'm going to hit I to mark it in, O to mark it out. Let's make it a little longer. And then, let's say I go over here and I turn off A2 and A1 on the record side. Okay, and you might be going, okay, basically you're saying don't bring the audio in. But here's what happens if I do that. If I turn A1 and A2 off, and I hit the insert button. Okay, it inserted the video, pushed all these video tracks down to the right, but it didn't push the audio down. And now my video is out of sync with my audio. And these little numbers here that you are now seeing in these clips in the timeline, in this case mine says -66, is how many frames they're out of sync now. So if I play this, my video is going to be out of sync with my audio.
Lunchtime.
Just a minute.
No. Now.
Okay. What is this? Green?
Okay, so obviously no good. So Command Z to undo that. Command Z to undo that. Okay, so when we turn off the track selectors on the record side, the blue track selectors. When we turn this off, we're saying don't bring anything into the timeline. But when they're on, even if we turn A1 off, when you do your edit, they're still editing what's called filler into the timeline. And that's keeping everything in sync. And this is one of the major differences between Avid and the other editing programs, in that this here and this up here on this track, in other programs we would think of that as a gap or an empty space. But Avid thinks of this as an object called filler. And filler is something you can edit into the timeline. It's something you can remove from the timeline. You can even add effects to filler in the video tracks in your timeline. Okay, so when I turn these off and do an insert edit, I'm also saying don't insert filler, and that filler is one of the things that's keeping this in sync. So you're like, oh, I don't want to have to remember to do that, every time. So here's a workaround. These little buttons right here, just to the right of your blue track selectors, these are sync locks. And these will keep all the active tracks in sync if you turn these sync locks on. If you want to turn all of the sync locks on and off at the same time, you can click the sync lock button in the timecode track, and that will turn all of them on or off. So I'm going to turn them all on. I'm going to turn A2 and A1 off again, just to show you that now, if I do an insert, even if these are off, even if those are off, if I do a splice in or an insert, it will keep everything in sync. It will still edit filler into the timeline, even if I've turned those off. Okay, so I'd say most of the time, you want to keep your sync locks on, and then simply turn them off when they get in the way. Okay, so I'm going to insert a couple of more clips. I'll load this clip in. I'll mark a couple seconds of this. I to mark it in. O to mark it out. My playhead is still at the edit point here. Splice in to cut that in. Now to show you, if our playhead wasn't right at the edit point, if I were to put my playhead in the middle of another clip, let me load something else into the source monitor. I to mark it in. O to mark it out. Once again, my playhead is right in the middle of the clip. If I did a splice in now, it would splice it into the middle of that other clip and push everything else down the timeline.
Lunchtime.
Just a minute.
No. Now.
Okay, so obviously I don't want that. I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that, and I'm going to Command click to snap my playhead to the edit point before that first clip. Okay, so now I want to insert, I've got a close-up of her feet as she's walking, and I'd like to kind of start the scene with that. So I'm going to go to my Scene 20 Clip Spin, and we're going to go to 20F Take 3. 20F Take 3.
Scene 20F, take 3.
Okay, here we go. And action. Okay, good. Okay, so I'm going to mark a couple seconds of that. So I'm just going to mark it in. Mark it out. I do want the audio from that. I do want those footsteps. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to turn A1 and A2 back on. Make sure all my other track selectors are on. And then I'm going to splice in, or V on my keyboard. Inserts that clip, pushes everything else down to the right. I'm going to drag my playhead back. Check it.
Lunchtime.
Just a minute.
No. Now.
wanted to...
Okay, so now let's talk about overwrite and how we can basically cover up material in our timeline. So let's go to scene 20G, take 2. And here's a different angle of Tristan walking in and saying her first line.
Scene 20G, take 2.
So once again, we're going to start walking, then give me a couple beats after action, and then your line. Okay, here we go, and action.
Lunch break.
Okay, so let's do this. I know I want this, I'm going to want this clip to end with her saying lunch break.
Lunch break.
Okay, so I'm going to mark an out right there. I'm going to mark an out right there. I'm just going to leave that like it is. Then I'm going to go down to my timeline, and I'm going to find what I want to replace in the timeline. So it's going to be the first part of this clip here. So I'm going to mark an in and an out in the timeline where I want to replace the clip. Pretty much up until now, we've just been using our playhead as our endpoint. But now we're going to specifically mark an in and an out. So I'm going to command click to snap my play to the beginning of the clip, I to mark an in.
Lunchtime.
Okay, and I'm going to mark an out right after she says lunchtime. And what I'm doing is I'm setting up what we call a 3-point edit. Let me zoom in a bit here. Okay, so I have just one mark in my source monitor. I have an out point. And then I have an in and an out in the timeline. The in to out in the timeline, if we look up here, is 2 seconds and 1 frame. So starting at this out point, it's going to basically back time the edit, and it's going to take 2 seconds and 1 frame of this clip to fill in this space. We're basically going to overwrite or cover this up. Okay, so once again, V1 is patched to V1, A1 to A1, A2 to A2, they're all on. And now I'm going to hit the red overwrite button, or B, on my keyboard. And that overwrites the clip into the timeline. I'm going to drag my playhead back and check it.
Lunch break.
Just a minute.
No. Now.
Okay.
Okay, so now, that worked out pretty well. But now let's do another approach. I have another shot of Rory saying just a minute, where she peeks her head around the corner. So let's go to 20H, take 2, but we're going to approach this a little differently. Let's first of all play it. She does it a couple times here, so let's watch that first. Lean out further again, just so I can get ready. Good, very good. Okay, and action.
Lunch break.
Just a minute.
Keep it rolling. Okay, and one more time, action.
Lunch break.
Just a minute.
Okay, so I'm going to mark that.
And
Okay, so I'm going to mark an in,
just a minute.
and as she starts to go back in, I'm going to mark an out. But now, if I were to just try to overwrite that, it might be a little hit and miss. It may work, it may not. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to remove that same part that's already in the timeline, and then splice this back in. So here's how we can remove it. So it's going to be the beginning of this clip here.
Just a minute.
No. Now.
Okay, so it's the just a minute. So I'm going to command click to snap to the head of the clip. I'm going to hit I to mark an in.
Just a minute.
And then I'm going to hit O to mark an out. And what I want to do is I want to remove this and then insert this. So to remove this, I already showed you this earlier, we're going to do what's called an extract. An extract is going to remove whatever's between the in and out points and close the gap. We have another function called a lift, which is this weightlifter button right here. That will lift whatever's between the in and out points, but it will leave filler. Okay, but in this case, we're going to do an extract. So I click extract. It removes whatever's between the in and out points, closes the gap. Playhead stays right there. So now I can go up here and I can splice that new clip back in. And then I'm just going to drag my playhead back and check it.
Lunch break!
Just a minute.
No, now.
Okay. What is this?
Green tea.
Okay, and that's how I can go about removing and replacing clips in the timeline in a very basic manner. So now, let's talk about some reaction shots. I want to add some reaction shots to my timeline. So I'm going to go down here to the scale bar. I'm going to zoom out a little bit just so I can see everything. And more than likely, these longer clips like here, 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 and maybe over here, probably we want to cut to the other person. Whoever's talking, we want to cut to the other person that's listening, throw a little reaction shot in. Okay, so I'm going to play through a couple of these clips, and I'm going to find places that I think are appropriate to put in a reaction shot.
I wanted a Coke.
Soda's bad for you. Plus, you've been looking a little puffy lately.
Okay, right there. She said, you've been looking a little puffy lately. This is a good place to put in a reaction shot of Rory reacting to that line. So,
Soda's bad for you. Plus, you've been looking a little puffy lately.
okay, right about there where she says puffy, I'm going to mark an in.
Lately, this is better for you. Trust.
I'm going to mark an out. And I'm basically marking the area in the timeline where I want the reaction shot to go. Okay, now let's go find one of Rory's medium shots. Oh, we could use close-ups too, but I'm going to go for the medium shot. And let's find her reacting to that puffy line.
Now.
Okay. What is this?
Green tea.
But I wanted a Coke.
No. Soda is bad for you. You've been looking a little puffy lately. This is better. Trust me.
Okay, right there. So
Hands are right up.
I'm going to back it up. And I'm going to put my playhead just before she looks down. Okay, so here's a case where you want to manually clear your in and out points. So I already have in and out points in this clip. I want to clear them out. I can either click the clear both marks button or hit the letter G on my keyboard. That'll clear those out. Now, here's another big difference between Avid and some of the other editing programs. In Avid, if you don't mark an endpoint in your source clip, your playhead is your endpoint. Okay, most other programs, if you don't mark an endpoint, will take the clip from the head of the clip. But Avid, your playhead is your endpoint. So I can just leave my playhead there, and this will still serve as a 3-point edit. If you want to, if it makes you feel more comfortable, you can go ahead and mark it in, but you don't have to. Okay, I'm going to leave my playhead there. I'm not going to mark it in just so we can see that this is going to work. But now we need to pay attention to the patch panel because I want to overwrite this reaction shot up onto the video 2 track. And I don't want anything to overwrite what's already in the timeline here. Okay, so I'm going to start by turning my blue track selectors off for A2, A1, and V1. And you'll see that the area between the in and out points on those tracks is no longer highlighted. Okay, these are not going to be affected by the edit. And my video 1 source automatically jumped up to the video 2 track because that's the only active track. This is called auto patching. Now, if you wanted to patch it yourself, you can actually click in the middle of your green video 1 track and drag, and that'll give you an arrow, and you can point it to the track you want it to go to. And basically we're saying when we do this edit, we want this video clip to go up here onto the video 2 track. Okay, so I've turned all my blue track selectors off except for video 2. The time code, it doesn't matter if it's on or off. Okay, so video 2 and V1 is patched to video 2. I'm now going to do an overwrite or hit B on my keyboard. And that's going to edit that clip onto the video 2 track. I'm going to drag my playback and check my work.
What is this?
Green tea.
But I wanted a Coke.
Soda's bad for you. Plus, you've been looking a little puffy lately. This is better for you. Trust me.
Okay, and that's a, pretty good reaction shot there. Okay, so once again, we use the patch panel over here to not only determine what tracks are going to go into the timeline, but where they're going to go into the timeline. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple more of those.
Where's Hal?
He's out with John and Vincent.
Why do you let him do that to you?
What?
Dump all the work on you?
He doesn't.
He's never here.
He works at night.
Really?
Yes, it's true. He finishes projects from the day before and starts on new projects for the next day. Sometimes I think he just leaves because the sun is coming up.
You're such an apologist for him.
Okay, so right here, once again, kind of in the middle of this, we'd like to cut to Tristan reacting. Okay, so I'm just going to mark an in and an out.
Yes, it's true. He finishes projects from the day
We'll say right about here, I'm going to hit I to mark an in,
before and starts on new projects for the next day.
O to mark an out. Let's find a good reaction of Tristan. So once again, there are already in and out points in this clip. I'm going to hit G on my keyboard to clear them out, or I could hit the clear both marks button. I'm going to drag my playhead back, find the line.
What is this?
Okay, so
He's out with John and Vincent.
Why do you let him do that to you?
What?
Dump all the work on you?
He doesn't.
He's never here.
He works at night.
Really?
Yeah, it's true. He finishes projects from the day before and sets up projects for the next day.
okay, right there, she does that little eye roll.
Yeah, it's kind of the
So I'm going to back it up. Once again, I could just leave my playhead there, but I'm going to hit I to mark an in. And I've set up a 3-point edit. I have an in and an out in the timeline. If I click on my timeline or my record monitor, I can see that I've marked an area of 2 seconds and 12 frames. Meaning when I do my edit, starting at this endpoint, it's going to take 2 seconds and 12 frames of this clip to fill in this space. Video 1 is still patched to video 2. They're both on. All my other blue track selectors are off, basically saying don't bring anything into the other tracks. I'm going to hit the red overwrite button, or B, on my keyboard. I'm going to drag my playhead back, and I'm going to check it.
Yes, it's true. He finishes projects from the day before and starts on new projects for the next day. Sometimes I think he just leaves because the sun is coming up.
You're such an apologist for him.
Okay, and there's the reaction. Okay, once again, I'm going to do 2 or 3 more of these. So I'm going to play through to the next kind of longer clip.
Taking advantage of you.
No, he isn't. He isn't.
You know what I say?
What?
I say you open your own business. You're too good to be working for someone who slacks off and leaves you to do all the work.
That's
Okay,
You know what I say?
what?
I say you
okay, we'll say right about here. I'm going to hit I to mark it in,
open your own business. You're too good to be working for someone.
O to mark it out. Let's find a good reaction shot of Rory.
This is better. Trust.
Where's Hal? He's out with John and Vincent. Why do you let him do that? What? Dump all the work on you? He doesn't. He's never here. He works at night. Really? Yes, it's true. He finishes projects from the day before and starts on new projects for the next day. Sometimes
He just leaves because the sun is coming up.
Why are you such an apologist for him? I think he's taking advantage of you.
He doesn't. He doesn't.
You know what I say?
What?
I say you open your own business. You're too good to work for someone who slacks off any chance.
Okay, right there. Okay, so I like that. So right before she kind of turns her head, gives that little sigh, I'm going to leave my playhead right there. Once again, double check my patch panel. Still where I want it. I'm going to hit B on my keyboard or overwrite. Drag my playhead back and check it.
You know what I say?
What?
I say you open your own business. You're too good to be working for someone who slacks off and leaves you to do all the work.
That's not how it is.
Okay, so I'm going to do the next one a little differently. I'm going to put a reaction shot over this clip over here.
already told you we split the work equally. Really?
Sure.
Really? If Hal could work for 24 hours, I'm sure he would.
Oh, yes. He's such a saint. You know, I bet he never even leaves. He probably crawls under desk and sleeps.
Okay, right here, I can hear that she kind of laughs. I'm not going to do it over the laugh because, you know, this isn't probably not going to line up with exactly where she does it. So maybe I'll do it a little bit before that.
You know, I bet he never even leaves. He probably...
Okay, we'll say maybe right about there. We might play around with it. But I'm going to mark it. I'll use the same clip.
Someone who slacks off any chance he gets and leaves you to do all the work.
That's not how it is. I already told you we split the work equally. Really?
Sure.
Really? If Hal could work for 24 hours, I'm sure he would.
Oh, yes. He's a saint. Maybe he didn't leave at all.
Okay, right there.
Maybe.
So this time I'm going to mark an endpoint, but I'm going to click and drag it to the in and out. I'm going to click and drag it to the in and out, and then when I get it close, I'm going to hold down the command key, and that will basically force it between the in and out points. Okay, still setting up a 3-point edit. I'm still doing an overwrite. I'm just doing more of a drag and drop overwrite. So I click, drag. When I get it close, oops, take a look at that. As I drag it, it's bringing in both the video and the audio. So I don't want to do that. Let's pull this back up here, release the mouse, and that's because I wasn't paying attention to my patch panel. Okay, even though A1 and A2 are turned off, when you're dragging and dropping, it's going by the green track selectors. So I need to turn the green A1 and A2 off. Now I can click and drag. It's only bringing the video, and when I get them near the in and out points, I hold down the command key. And check that out. It's forcing it in between the in and out points. I'm going to drag my play it back and check it.
Oh, yes. He's such a saint. You know, I bet he never even leaves. He probably crawls under...
Oh, she started to laugh there at the end. So here's what I could do with that. I'm going to clear my in and out points. I could undo that and kind of redo it. But instead, I was about to show you guys a couple of other tools anyway. As we mentioned at the beginning of the class, we've got these segment modes and these trim tools. Okay, the segment modes allow you to click on clips in the timeline and drag them around. Okay, and there are actually two of these segment modes. There's a red arrow, but if we right click, there's also a yellow arrow. The red arrow is for overwrite. So if you click and drag, you're basically going to be overwrite wherever you drop the clip. The yellow one is for inserting. So we want the overwrite. I'm going to check the red arrow. I'm going to turn that button on, and I can now grab that clip and I can drag it around the timeline. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag it a little bit over to the right as she starts to laugh here, and that should line up with the laughing in the clip. Let's look at it.
Such a saint. You know, I bet he never even leaves. He probably crawls under desk and sleeps.
Close. I might need to push it back just a little bit.
Such a saint. You know, I bet he never even leaves. He probably crawls under desk and sleeps.
See, and I made that work. Okay, with just these tools here. Once again, there's probably better ways I could have done that, but this gives me an opportunity to show you that we've got these segment modes here that allow you to click on clips in the timeline. You can click on them, delete them, click on them, drag them around if you're more of a mouse-based editor. Okay, I'm going to turn that off. I'll come back to that in a few minutes. Okay, so we've got one more clip here at the end that's really long that I'd like to put in a couple of more shots. Okay, so I'm going to play it.
Whenever he gets tired.
No. That's weird. Your mind's not working right.
Or maybe it works too well.
What is this?
A veggie burger.
But I wanted a hamburger.
No, you didn't. This is better.
What, is this one of those fake meat pretend burgers?
No, I don't trust those. This is true veggie.
Okay, so this is lasting kind of long. And usually I would try to find a couple of other shots to put in there and kind of trim it down. But I'm just going to put in a couple of more. I'm going to put in a reaction shot and then kind of a cutaway. So as she's pulling the containers out of the bag, I'm going to mark an in and an out. And we should have a shot, one of Tristan's close-ups. We're at the end. She's kind of looking proud of herself. So I'm just going to play it, see if I can find that.
No, you didn't. This is much healthier. Trust me.
Okay, that right there. Okay, so I'm going to clear these in and out points. I'm going to hit this button right here, clear both marks, or G on my keyboard. I'm going to hit J to back this up a bit. I to mark an in. I've set up my 3-point edit, but I need to pay attention to my patch panel. So once again, video 1, green source, needs to patch to blue video 2 track. And then I need to turn the other tracks off because I only want to overwrite the video, not the audio. And then I'm going to hit the overwrite button, or B on my keyboard. Drag my play it back and okay, and then I've got a close-up of her picking up the hamburger. So I'm going to mark where I want this to go in the time. Actually, you know, I'm not going to mark it. I'm going to command click to put my playhead right there. Okay, so we're just going to have using our playhead as our endpoint. I have a close-up of the burger. Okay, and we'll say maybe, let's try to mark an in and an out, like so. I've done a 3-point edit, but I've done it a little differently. This time I just have an in point in my timeline and an in and an out in my source. Once again, video 1 is patched to video 2. The other blue track selectors are off. I'm going to overwrite. This might not line up. Yeah, it's a little off there. It really should end closer to there. Okay, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to undo this. And it would have been better to do a 3-point edit in the timeline. Now, as I've mentioned over and over again, there are other ways to do this. There's other ways I could trim that out and fix that. Okay, for this basic class, we're going to do it this way. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to clear my endpoint because I like where this is ending, but I really don't know where it needs to start in order to fill in the space that I want. So I want to clear my endpoint. D, the letter D on your keyboard clears the endpoint. D clears the in, F clears the out, G clears both. Okay, and then I'm going to go back down to my timeline, mark an in, and okay, right there is when the burger's coming up, and I'm going to mark an out. Okay, so I've set up my 3-point edit. I'm back timing this one because I know where it wants to end, or where I want it to end. I'm going to do an overwrite. Okay, now let's check it. Oh, look at that. Okay, anytime you find yourself pausing, hit Command S to save your work. Command S to save your work. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to trim a couple of these clips down. Then we're going to take a break. And when we come back from break, we're going to talk about adjusting audio levels and exporting. Okay, but I want to talk about doing a little bit of basic trimming here. So I'm going to go to the beginning of my sequence. I'm going to zoom in on these first few clips here. I'm going to show you two different ways that we could trim these down. So I play these clips, and these first few clips, they're a little long. And I like to trim them down, make them shorter. Here are ways we can do this. Okay, so first of all, this first cat clip. Let's say I want to get rid of the first third of the clip. Well, I could do this. I could drag my play to the beginning of the clip, hit I to mark it in, drag my play at about a third of the way into the clip, O to mark it out, and then I can turn all of my blue track selectors back on. All that area is highlighted that I want to get rid of, and I hit the extract button, that button with the scissors, or X, on my keyboard. And I've trimmed the head of that clip. That clip is now much shorter. Okay, now let's say I want to trim the last third of this clip. Okay, here's how I want to do that. I'm going to put my play at about a third of the way from the end of the clip, and I'm going to hit I to mark it in. But when we mark it out, we want to make sure we snap to the tail of this clip before we mark in our out point. So as I mentioned before, command clicking will snap you to an edit point. And what it's doing is it's snapping your playhead to the head of a clip. But if you want to snap your playhead to the tail of the clip, you hold down Option, Command, and click. Okay, so I Option, Command, click on the tail of the clip, O to mark it out, make sure all my track selectors are on, and I hit Extract or X on my keyboard. And I have trimmed the tail of that clip. Those first two clips are now much shorter. Okay, but here's another way we can do it. We can add an edit to a clip and then delete the part we don't want. Okay, so here's how to do that. Let's say I want to split this clip in half and then delete the second part of it. Well, here's how we add an edit. First of all, the add edit is going to go wherever your playhead is across all active tracks. So before I add an edit here, I'm going to turn off video 2, audio 1, audio 2. So only my video 1 track is on, and it's only going to split that clip. I put my playhead where I want to add the edit, and then we click this button right here, Add Edit. And when I do, it splits the clip. And if you look, there are two little white lines, two little white dash looking things right there. And that's letting you know that this is what's called a match frame edit. It's frame to frame on both sides of the edit. So if you were to drag your playhead back and play it and look at your record monitor, you would have no idea that there's an edit there. Okay, because it's a match frame, or what you might call a through edit in other editing programs. Okay, now I want to delete this part of the clip. And this is where we can use our segment modes. Now the red arrow segment mode, if I click it, this is called the lift overwrite segment mode. And if I grab my red arrow, the lift overwrite segment mode, click on a clip and hit delete, it's going to delete the clip, but it's going to leave filler. It lifts the clip, but leaves filler. Okay, that's not what I want here. I want to close that gap. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo. I'm going to go up to my segment mode. I'm going to right click. I'm going to uncheck the red arrow. I'm going to check the yellow arrow, and then I'm going to click off of the menu. And now my yellow arrow segment mode is selected. This is called the Extract Splice In segment mode. So now if I click on a clip with this tool and hit delete, it will delete the clip and close the gap. But oh, look at that. It deleted it, but it pulled all of these other tracks down. Okay, so it knocked it out of sync. Okay, so I'm going to hit Command Z to undo. Okay, so once again, I'm going to undo that because even though the sync locks are on, they don't recognize this tool for doing that. What it wants to do is it wants to remove the same amount of material across all these tracks. So here is the better way to do that in this case. So once again, it does delete it. It does close the gap, but because I have got all these other things on the other tracks, it knocks it out of sync. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo. And we're going to do this instead. I'm going to turn that off, put my playhead over that clip, make sure that only the video 1 track is active, and then I'm going to hit this button right here, or T on my keyboard. And that is the keyboard shortcut for mark clip. And that'll mark an in and an out around the clip underneath the playhead. Once I mark that, I can turn A1 and A2 back on, and then I can hit extract or X on my keyboard, and that will remove whatever's between the in and out point and close the gap. Now, I'm going to undo that. I'm going to show you something. I'm going to turn video 2, audio 1, and audio 2 off, and I'm going to do that again. And this time it removes it and it keeps everything in sync. And that's because my sync locks are on. Okay, so whereas my extract, splice, and segment mode, this yellow arrow doesn't recognize that, the extract function will. Okay, so it's a little tricky. It's a little hard to kind of wrap your head around the first time. And this is why I really prefer, in a lot of cases, just to mark clips and extract them than to use this tool to delete them, because you have to be careful about how to remove everything across all the tracks. Now, here's one way I could have done it. This is kind of taking a little sidetrack here, but I'm going to undo that. I'm going to clear my in and out points, G. I've added the edit here. Now, I could do this. I could command click to snap to the edit. Turn video 2, audio 1, and audio 2 back on. And then I could click the add edit button. And that will also add an edit to the filler. Then I could command click to snap to this edit point, click add edit, and then that would add an edit that lines up with that clip in the filler again. Then I could grab my segment mode, click here, shift click, shift click, shift click, hit delete. Deletes all the selected filler and clip, closes the gap, keeps everything in sync. I think that's a really long, convoluted way to do it. Okay, but that really kind of demonstrates what we're doing here and the way this works. Okay, so that's a quick demonstration of how to remove stuff from the timeline. Now I'm going to turn this back on. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to go to the beginning of my sequence. We're going to play this, and we're going to see what we have so far.
Lunch break!
Just a minute.
No, now.
Okay. What is this?
Green tea.
But I wanted a Coke.
Soda's bad for you. Plus, you've been looking a little puffy lately. This is better for you. Trust me. Where's Hal?
He's out with John and Vincent.
Why do you let him do that to you?
What?
Dump all the work on you?
He doesn't.
He's never here.
He works at night.
Really?
Yes, it's true. He finishes projects from the day before and starts on new projects for the next day. Sometimes I think he just leaves because the sun is coming up.
You're such an apologist for him. He's taking advantage of you.
No, he isn't. He isn't.
You know what I say?
What?
I say you open your own business. You're too good to be working for someone who slacks off and leaves you to do all the work.
That's not how it is. I already told you we split the work equally. Really.
Sure.
Really, if Hal could work for 24 hours, I'm sure he would.
Oh yes, he's such a saint. You know, I bet he never even leaves. He probably crawls under desk and sleeps whenever he gets tired.
No. Mm-mm. That's weird. Your mind's not working right.
Or maybe it works too well.
What is this?
A veggie burger.
But I wanted a hamburger.
No, you didn't. This is better.
What, is this one of those fake meat pretend burgers?
No, I don't trust those. This is true veggie.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take a break. And in the next part of the class, we're going to do a little adjustment on the audio, kind of make the audio sound a little nicer. And then we're going to talk about how to export this so people can take a look at your work. See you guys in a few minutes. Okay, so this is the last part of the class. What we're going to do now is we're going to do a little bit of audio work. We're going to adjust the gain on these clips. And we're also going to add some really small crossfades in between the clips to kind of smooth out any pops that might be happening at the edit point. After we do that, we're going to export this to upload to a social media site like YouTube or something like that, YouTube, Vimeo, that kind of thing. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and take a look at our timeline. So I'm going to go down here to the bottom left corner of the timeline to the fast menu. We're going to go to audio data. This is where we turned our waveform on earlier. But we have another option called clip gain. We also have volume, but we're going to focus on clip gain. Clip gain is a clip-wide adjustment. You raise or lower the gain for the entire clip. Volume allows you to raise and lower the volume within the clip. For this, we're just going to focus on clip gain. So once again, I'm going down to the fast menu in the bottom left corner of the timeline. We're going to go to audio data, and we're going to choose clip gain. And when you do, you have a little button now in the bottom left corner of each of your clips. And you've got a scale on the clips that kind of represents the gain adjustment you're going to make. So I'm going to go to the very first couple of clips here. I'm going to zoom in. And I'm going to play till we get to this clip right here, the second one.
Lunch break.
Okay, now, if you will recall, audio 2 is Tristan's microphone. Audio 1 is Roy's microphone. And you might have been able to hear a little hum in some of these clips. And that is because, for some reason, whenever she was silent, Rory's microphone seemed to pick up a little bit of hum. So, or the goal here is that, or it might have been Tristan's, but the goal here is that essentially, whenever Rory's not talking, we're going to bring her volume all the way down. Whenever Tristan's not talking, we're going to bring that volume all the way down. And we're just going to alternate that. We also want to make sure that our audio...
Lunch break.
In our audio meters is kind of going up into the yellow area. So if we look up here in the upper left corner of the timeline, there are some little audio meters. And basically, you know, balanced audio or good audio is kind of hitting in the yellow area of the audio meters. Now it's really kind of hard to see this
Lunch break.
up here. So I'm going to show you how to do a little bit of customization on your interface. Okay, I really haven't talked about that much in this particular class because I want to kind of work with most stuff at the default settings and with the default interface and all that. Okay, however, these audio meters are really small and kind of hard to kind of determine where things are hitting as far as your levels. So we have larger audio meters called the audio tool that we can open up and then we can dock it over here on the right side of the timeline. So to open up the audio tool, we're going to go to Tools, Audio Tool, Tools, Audio Tool. That's going to open up this audio tool right here. To move it around, we can just grab this gray bar at the top. We can grab the bottom right corner, kind of stretch it out there. But what I want to do is I want to put this audio tool on the right side of my timeline. So if you look around the interface, all of your windows have a purple tab on the left side of the window. And we can actually grab that purple tab and start to drag this around. And as I do, green bars are going to pop up around the interface. And those green bars represent a place where I can put this window. So I'm going to grab my audio tool. I'm going to grab that purple tab. I'm going to drag it over this green bar on the right side of my timeline. And when that area highlights that kind of white rectangle, I release the mouse. And now I've put my audio tool in its own little window on the right side of my timeline. Okay, now I'm going to play this.
Lunch break.
And basically what we want is we want her dialogue to average somewhere between like -6 and -12. Okay, kind of hitting kind of around this area right here. So we're going to do two things. First of all, I'm going to go to this little button here in the bottom left corner of the clip on track 1. I'm going to click on that. It's going to pull that all the way down. Then I'm going to click the little button in the bottom left corner of the clip on A2, and I'm going to raise that up. And when I do, a little black line appears that represents where I set the level for that clip, and a number appears that shows me how much I've either raised or lowered the gain. I'm going to drag my playhead back, I'm going to play it, and I'm going to look at my meters.
Lunch break.
Okay, and it starts to now go up kind of in the yellow area. Okay, now I'm going to click that button again. I'm going to raise this up even more.
Lunch break.
Okay, and that gets it kind of where I want it. Okay, so +9. +9 works for that clip. Okay, then I'm going to go to the next clip.
Just a minute.
And first of all, I'm going to take the clip on A2, click that little button that gets the slider, and I'm going to pull that down to nothing. And then I'm going to click the button for this slider, and I'm going to pull that up. And then I'm going to drag my playhead back and play it.
Just a minute. Just a minute.
Okay, that seems pretty good. And then I'm just going to kind of alternate that. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing for each of these.
No. Now.
Okay, so I'm going to raise that.
Okay.
And then I'm going to raise that.
No. Now.
Okay.
Okay, let's raise both of these up as far as they'll go. When you adjust this way, you can only go up to +12. We do have an audio mixer that we're not going to talk about in this class that will allow you to actually go above +12.
No. Now.
Okay.
But we're going to leave that like this.
What is this?
Okay, so once again, I'm going to bring this audio all the way down and then bring this up.
What is this?
Green tea.
Bring this down and this up.
Green tea.
But I wanted a Coke.
And once again, I'm just alternating these at this point.
But I wanted a Coke.
Soda's bad for you. Plus.
And I'm going to do this for the rest of the clip. So once again, whenever Tristan's talking, we bring her channel up and Rory's down.
You've been looking a little puffy lately. This is better for you. Trust me. Where's Hal?
He's out with Johnny.
Now this brings in the case for doing what's called checkerboarding your audio, where we'd have each of these, I mean, the dialogue is on their own track, but we would also be getting rid of the audio of the other characters. So it would actually look like a checkerboard if we were to do that. Okay? Once again, that gets us into more of the advanced aspect of this. In this case, you know, when Rory's talking, bring hers up and bring Tristan's all the way down.
He's out with John and Vincent.
Why do you let him do that?
okay, and just alternate. So go ahead and do that on your own. I'm going to go ahead and do mine, but I'm going to kind of fast forward through it because this is going to take a few minutes.
Why do you let him do that to you?
And it's just going to be very repetitive. So I'm going to finish this, but I'm going to fast forward. Once again, if you need to pause it and do this on your own, you can do that. But I'm going to go ahead and finish this and kind of get through this as quickly as possible. Okay, I'm almost done with this, but I wanted to point out one more thing with this. Once you make an adjustment to the gain, and you can see that black line going through the middle of the clip. Once you see that black line, you no longer have to go to the button in the bottom left corner of the clip. You can actually just grab the line, the black line, and drag it up or down to raise and lower the gain.
No, I don't trust those. This is true, Veggie.
Okay, so once again, once you see that black line, once you have the black line, you can just use that. Now, I gotta tell you, this is kind of like the I don't want to say the quick and easy because I don't think it's that easy. But this is the way to adjust the levels directly in the timeline, kind of like you're used to doing in other programs. Okay, but just to kind of show you what's ahead, if we go up to Tools, there is an audio mixer. And we can use the audio mixer to do these same adjustments, and I think it is usually a little bit more user-friendly. But right now, we're keeping it basic, just using the controls directly in the timeline. Okay, the last thing I want to do here is I want to add tiny little crossfades at all of the edit points in the audio. And that will smooth out some of the pops that we're hearing at these edit points. And here's a quick way to do that. I'm going to put my playhead before this very first audio clip here, and I'm going to hit I to mark an in. Then I'm going to put my playhead at the end of the sequence, and I'm going to hit O to mark an out. And then I'm going to put my playhead near any one of the edits in the audio tracks. And then I'm going to deactivate video 2. I'm going to deactivate video 1 because we're about to add transitions to our timeline, specifically audio transitions. And when you add the transitions using what's called the quick transition window, it's going to add the transitions to whatever tracks are active. Okay, so we only want to add it to audio. So we mark it in and out where we want to add the transitions. We turn the other tracks off so only the A1 and A2 tracks are active. And then we're going to click this button right here. The quick transition button. Your keyboard shortcut is the / key. That's the key right above the return key. Click on that. And it's going to open up this window here, quick transition. Now, we're not going to get too deep into this. We're going to pretty much leave most of these settings as they are. We're going to verify that A1 and A2 are selected over here. We're going to leave this set to dissolve, set it on cut, but the duration, we're going to change it to 2 frames. And that's going to add a tiny little crossfade at each of the edit points. Then we're going to say apply to all transitions into out. We're going to check that box right there. And we're going to click add. And if you look in your timeline now, there are little tiny icons at all the edits, and those are crossfades. I'm going to clear my in and out points. I'm going to go back to the beginning of my sequence. I'm going to play it, check my work.
Lunch break!
Just a minute.
No, now.
Okay. What is this?
Green tea.
But I wanted a Coke.
Soda's bad for you. Plus, you've been looking a little puffy lately. This is better for you. Trust me. Where's Hal?
He's out with John and Vincent.
Why do you let him do that to you?
What?
Dump all the work on you?
He doesn't.
He's never here.
He works at night.
Really?
Yes, it's true. He finishes projects from the day before and starts on new projects for the next day. Sometimes I think he just leaves because the sun is coming up.
You're such an apologist for him. He's taking advantage of you.
No, he isn't. He isn't.
You know what I say?
What?
I say you open your own business. You're too good to be working for someone who slacks off and leaves you to do all the work.
That's not how it is. I already told you we split the work equally. Really.
Sure.
Really, if Hal could work for 24 hours, I'm sure he would.
Oh, yes. He's such a saint. You know, I bet he never even leaves. He probably crawls under desk and sleeps whenever he gets tired.
No. That's weird. Your mind's not working right.
Or maybe it works too well.
What is this?
A veggie burger.
But I wanted a hamburger.
No, you didn't. This is better.
What, is this one of those fake meat pretend burgers?
No, I don't trust those. This is true veggie.
Okay, so there we go. We're finished now for now at least, and we want to export. We want to be able to show this to people. So I'm going to go over here to my track selectors. I'm going to turn all of my track selectors on. I'm going to make sure that none of my timeline is marked. And then we're going to go up to File, Output, Export to File. File, Output, Export to File. Or you can go over to your record monitor, right-click, Export. It's the same thing either way. First of all, it's going to ask you what to name your export. I'm going to call this Scene 20 Dialogue Scene. Oops, let's see. If I can type, there we go, Dialogue Scene. And then I need to choose a location. So I've got my external drive here. I'm going to click on my external drive. I'm going to click New Folder. I'm just going to call this Exports. So I've named it, I've chosen a location, but now I need to go down to the settings. So we're going to click on Options, and we basically start at the top and work our way down. So Export As, you've got lots of different file types, but once again, we're going to do something very specific. We're going to export for, say, YouTube, or this will work for a lot of different platforms like this. So all you need to do is a Google search and see what settings they want for whatever site you're going to upload it to. So if I look here, container MP4. Okay, so export as, we've got MP4 as an option. And that's going to kind of reset this window to give you MP4 options. Okay, so then audio codec, we're just going to commit some of these to memory. Audio codec AAC, video codec H.264, frame rate, it'll support the frame rate that we have, bit rate, and so on. Okay, so really just follow these instructions. So I'm going to work my way down. So use marks. Okay, we don't want to use any marks, meaning if I marked in and out points, I could say use marks, and it would only export that part of the sequence. So I'm going to leave that unchecked. Use selected tracks. Okay, we did select the track, so we want to export, so we're going to leave that. We didn't make any audio tracks inactive, so we could leave that checked or unchecked, doesn't matter. We're going to leave our raster dimension as is. We didn't do any kind of mask or mask margins, so we can leave that alone. We do have the option to export different frame sizes, but we're going to leave it. We're going to leave most of this as is. We're going to do 1920 by 1080, 16 by 9, square pixels, stretch, 24 frames per second. Rec 709. According to Google, they actually want us to keep this in legal range. So I'm going to say Rec 709, keep as legal range. Which in the past, you would think, well, people are watching YouTube on their computers. Computers are typically full range, scale from legal range to full range. But according to Google, they say, no, make it legal range. We'll adjust anything on our end that needs to be adjusted. Then codec family. Okay, now we need to go back to here. So codec, H.264. So codec family, H.264. Compression, H.264. Color, depth, 8-bit, that's really your only choice. Constant bit rate, target bit rate. Okay, so bit rate, they say, if we just look at the instructions, it depends on the frame size. So 1080p, they say for 24 frames per second, 8 megabits. Okay, so I'm going to go to target bit rate. I'm just going to drag it down to around 8 megabits. Okay, then I'm going to scroll down. Format. Okay, they already said audio format, AAC. And once again, AAC, stereo, sample rate 96/48, so we'll do stereo 48. Constant bit rate, and then once again, there is a bit rate for stereo is 384. Bit rate, 384 is an option. Okay, so these are all the settings that YouTube wants. And I just got them online. I just looked them up on Google. Okay, so if you're going to do this over and over again, so you don't have to make these choices every time, you can save this as a preset. Okay, so save will simply save the settings for the export you're about to do. But save as will save a preset, so you don't have to do this every time. So I'm going to click Save As, and I'm going to say YouTube. You want to give it a good descriptive name. I'm going to call it YouTube 1080p 24 FPS, frames per second. I click OK, and now here are your presets. Okay, so now I've got a new preset for this. Okay, so once again, I've named it, chosen the location to put the file I'm about to create. If you don't have a preset, you click Options, choose all of your options. But when you're done, you can save it as a preset. So now you can just go here, choose the preset, and then click Save. And now it's going to export that file. Okay, so this looks like it's going to take about a minute. I'm going to fast forward this so we don't have to wait through it. And then, once it's done, we'll take a look at it and see how it did. Okay, so our export is finished. I'm going to hit Command H to hide Avid. I'm going to go to my external drive. There's my exports folder. Here's my scene 20 dialogue scene MP4. I'm just going to double click it to open it in QuickTime, and we're going to play it and make sure that it exported the way we want.
Lunch break!
Just a minute.
No, now.
Okay. What is this?
Green tea.
But I wanted a Coke.
Soda's bad for you. Plus, you've been looking a little puffy lately. This is better for you. Trust me. Where's Hal?
He's out with John and Vincent.
Why do you let him do that to you?
What?
Dump all the work on you?
He doesn't.
He's never here.
He works at night.
Really?
Yes, it's true. He finishes projects from the day before and starts on new projects for the next day. Sometimes I think he just leaves because the sun is coming up.
You're such an apologist for him. He's taking advantage of you.
No, he isn't. He isn't.
You know what I say?
What?
I say you open your own business. You're too good to be working for someone who slacks off and leaves you to do all the work.
That's not how it is. I already told you we split the work equally. Really.
Sure.
Really, if Hal could work for 24 hours, I'm sure he would.
Oh, yes. He's such a saint. You know, I bet he never even leaves. He probably crawls under desk and sleeps whenever he gets tired.
No. That's weird. Your mind's not working right.
Or maybe it works too well.
What is this?
A veggie burger.
But I wanted a hamburger.
No, you didn't. This is better.
What, is this one of those fake meat pretend burgers?
No, I don't trust those. This is true veggie.
And there we go. So it exported just the way we wanted. And now it's ready to upload to YouTube or wherever. Okay, so that is the end of class. That is our basic Avid Media Composer class. So if you've never used Avid Media Composer before, or maybe you're moving over to another system and you want to kind of learn a little bit, this kind of shows you the editing. How some of the editing works in Media Composer. Now, as I said, I'm going to do more advanced classes that get a little bit more into what's going on under the hood. We're going to talk about things like linking versus importing. Okay, we just linked to our media in this particular class. A more professional workflow, typically you import media and create new Avid media that it puts in a specific location. But that's a little advanced for this. I really just wanted to show you guys, in, out, insert, overwrite, kind of what the interface looks like and how with just a little bit of knowledge, you can put something together pretty decently. But as I do the more intermediate and advanced classes, we're going to start talking about the trim tools, trim mode. This software goes really, really deep. I mean, we covered a lot of information in about 3 hours here, okay? But you learned how to create a project. You learned how to create a user profile. We learned how to link to media. We learned how to edit a sequence, basic drag and drop editing, inserts, overwrites. We learned how to do a little bit of audio work. We talked a little creative at the same time, and we learned how to export our work. So if you did purchase and download the media for this class, just know that I've used the same media for my Premiere Pro Basics class, and I'm going to be doing a DaVinci Resolve Basics class that uses this same media. Okay, so if you want to do those classes as well, you already have the media. You do not have to purchase and download it again. Okay, and if you have any thoughts or suggestions, things you would like me to see, like you would like to see me do and demonstrate in some of these classes, put them in the comment section. I will take a look at that and try to accommodate as much as I can. And once again, don't forget to like and subscribe to these videos. Okay, so thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the class, and I'll see you in the next one.